Welcome to the Baltimore City Council. My name's Mary Pat Clark, Chair of the Education and Youth Committee of the Baltimore City Council. To my left is my colleague, Councilman William P. Welch, who is the lead sponsor of both resolutions that we are discussing this afternoon. In a moment, I will ask Councilman Welch if he'll talk about these two resolutions, which he has requested, and I think it's a good idea that we talk about at the same time. In other words, they are interrelated, and instead of trying to divide this hearing into two parts, you don't have to talk about both things if you're testifying. We'll just accept testimony and comments on either or both. We will begin with our city agency representatives in a moment. Let me say that to my right is Mr. DePaul Nibber, who is staff to this committee. To his right is Mr. Phil Plymouth, I'm sorry, Paul. Usually I call him, I get the Paul right, but I call him Pontiac. I did that once. It was horrible. It was his first day of work. His name is Paul Plymouth, and he's a very fine person. You see him every Monday night on television because he is not only the assistant legislative director for the president of the city council, but he is the reading clerk of the city council, a very tough job also. Let's see. So I've introduced the city council people, and let me, yes, Mr. Blendy, he's back with a beard, yes. Nicholas Blendy is here representing the mayor's office. Thank you for being here. And so we have two resolutions that are very timely given the spring and early summer that we are living through. And I must say that for all the tension and problems, I, for one, am feeling very optimistic about the effects of the outpouring of citizen wanting to help, to make a difference, to make this world a better place for especially for our young people. I'm beginning to see it take effect in programs that are being presented. For example, although this is not related to your topic, I am very pleased about this new program where our senior citizens will be getting their sidewalks shoveled in the snow by the young people of our community who take on the task this coming winter of regularly shoveling the snow of certain elderly and disabled householders who are not able to do it themselves. And so it's such a marriage of the generations in such an opportunity for bonding and for trust back and forth that I just think it's a great, it's little program, but it's apparently growing by leaps and bounds even as we speak. So that plus how many young people we have been able to hire and place in youth works, well, thousands beyond what we were able to fund before April 27th. So major changes. The school system and the city have been chosen by say yes to be seriously now considered as a city where we can guarantee those last dollars to make tuition to college a possibility for all our children. These are all things that have grown out of trouble. And so have these resolutions. And so, Councilman, we have two resolutions. We're going to hear them together. If you would take a few minutes to just explain both of them, and then we're going to begin with Dr. Wen, who will be representing the health department, go to the school system, and then open it up to our sign-ins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Councilman William Pete Welch, and I thank all of you for attending this hearing and showing interest, and those especially who will be testifying. If you ever look at YouTube, one of the most popular things that you'll see on YouTube are fights after school by our children. That's not what we want. We have to start somewhere in teaching our children how not just to deal with themselves, but with each other. That's the purpose of this resolution, making it a requirement to have nonviolent conflict resolution as part of the Baltimore City school curriculum, grades K through 12. The second resolution is trauma counseling, making it available for our children who live in violent-prone areas. And this is something near and dear to my heart because I've seen the effects on children who have seen violence in the early parts of their lives and how they become collateral damage 10 or 15 years down the road. Donnie was one of those people that I encountered recently, and he was an individual who experienced violence on Edmondson Avenue in a Sudsville early in his life, watching the attendant killed for just a few dollars. And he made up his mind that he would not be a victim. And the way that he became not a victim was to become one of Baltimore's most heinous killers. So I know what it does and what the effects are, and I want to alleviate that so our children can have a much clearer path to adulthood and be productive, not just for themselves, but for their families, their neighborhoods, and our city. So that's the intent of these two resolutions, and I hope and pray that we can move forward with our children being healthier, dealing with each other without violence, creating better neighborhoods and a better city for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman, and thank you for bringing these issues before this committee and the council. I apologize that the rest of my committee is not here yet, but they will be, and I'm sure, and it is vacation time, and some may even be out of town. Let me begin our testimony with Dr. Wen, if I may, the Commissioner of Health. You walked into a job, and then all you do is show up on television to report on the next thing that's happening. And we are so grateful that you are an activist and really so already come to us with so much experience in the issues that we're facing. One of the most important of which is the whole idea of crime and violence as part of a almost infectious disease. And thank you for standing up for us and explaining things so well.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for that very kind introduction, Chair Clark and Councilman Welsh. Great to see you. Thank you for sponsoring these two very important resolutions, and I'm delighted to be here to speak in support of both of them. So, Chair Clark, you mentioned that my job is to oversee public health in the city, and for us, ensuring that all of our children have access to trauma counseling, mental health, and also learn about nonviolent conflict resolution is their big priorities for us in health, in public health, in keeping our city healthy. We know, as Councilman Welsh pointed out very well, violence doesn't just appear out of nowhere. And in fact, there are dozens of scientific studies that show trauma is what leads to violence. And then violence then leads to trauma, and it's this cycle, this infectious cycle, as Chair Clark mentioned, that then continues. Our children are the most at-risk population in our city to suffer from the effects of trauma, not only from the unrest, but also from decades of poverty, neglect, racism, and widespread disparities. It's traumatic to live on streets where you know people will get shot, where you don't feel safe going out to play or walk to school. It's traumatic to not know whether your family will have a place to live next month, or to know whether you will get food. And it's traumatic to be the victims of brutality, to suffer from racism, to know that your life expectancy will be 20 years less because of your skin color or the block that you grew up on. Now, that's the bad news. And that is that if we were to design the perfect place where our children would be exposed to trauma, we have a perfect place for that. We know that there is huge unmet mental health needs in our children and in our families. But there's also good news, and that is that young people can most directly and most quickly benefit from mental health and trauma intervention. So it's imperative that we as city leaders act to bridge the gap of unmet mental health treatment for our youth. And also that we begin to change our norms so that we're working to empower our young people. Instead of pointing at our young people as the problems, we want to say that our young people are the future and they're the solutions as well, which is something that our mayor, our city council have so much committed to, the future of our young people in the city. Now, the health department is working on a number of initiatives to address these mental health needs, and I want to mention what they are and also how they may support these two resolutions that you have put forth. First, in the wake of the unrest, we developed a mental health and trauma recovery plan that is ongoing. That includes a 24/7 crisis counseling for adults and children, healing circles and group counseling sessions that are available to any group that requests them as well. These services are still available. They will continue to be available. And we encourage all community groups and neighborhood associations to contact us if they would like these free healing circles and group counseling sessions to take place. And we continue our active outreach to make that happen. Second, our mayor, Mayor Rawlings Blake, has committed to making our city trauma-informed. What that means, trauma-informed care, it means that this is a framework for understanding, recognizing, and responding to all types of trauma in order to help survivors rebuild a sense of control and empowerment. It's important for children and adults alike. This training will help to ensure that our residents are treated with dignity and respect in difficult situations and will lessen the health and social impact of trauma. The health department began this initiative last week by training many of our own staff in the first inaugural training. Other city agencies that are scheduled to participate in future trainings will include Housing, Recreation and Parks, and the Baltimore City Police Department. Our plan is to train all frontline city workers on trauma-informed care. And this is a positive step that we're taking to build a good relationship, a better relationship between our government employees and our residents. And I want to take this opportunity to also thank our Deputy Mayor, Don Kierstader, who has been an ardent supporter of everything that we're doing in the city around trauma-informed care. She and the mayor and Assistant Deputy Mayor Dang, who is here, have all been fantastic supporters and continue to significantly push our efforts around trauma-informed care and counseling. Third, we are working with our federal partners and our private entities to acquire funding to increase mental health services, trauma counseling, and nonviolent resolution as well. I want to mention a program in the health department that some may not know about, which is that we're funded by the Centers for Disease Control, which is a federal entity that also does Ebola and measles and other diseases, because we do believe that trauma and violence are public health issues. The Centers for Disease Control funds a program called Dating Matters in our schools that goes to 12 different middle schools to teach about teen dating violence. 40% of our middle school students are either victims or perpetrators of teen dating violence, which could be physical, emotional, it could be cyberbullying. All these issues are important for us to recognize, and so we teach this form of nonviolent conflict resolution, and are looking into other models for us to teach as well. We believe, for example, that it's important for every child to be screened for mental health services, because if we don't know whether our children screen positive, how can we know to provide it for them? And so we're working with our federal partners, Michael Cryer and One Baltimore, with our members of Congress, for example, to help to secure funds so that we can align our federal funding with the needs of the city when it comes to mental health as well. So the health department, on behalf of the health department, I wish to commend the city council for working to address the mental health needs of our youth. And we look forward to working with you to expand trauma counseling and also to teach nonviolent conflict resolutions to our youth and to those who are the most vulnerable. So thank you for allowing this opportunity to testify and for your hard work to continue to improve the health and well-being of our citizens.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you for being here. Well, I know you have to go on to other appointments, and thank you for taking time to be with us. And my apologies, I don't know how I didn't, but I didn't see our Deputy Mayor, Dawn Kerstatter, and I'm so glad to acknowledge her, and she's going to be one of our presenters in August for the Youth, for Education and Youth Committee, where we have a chance to talk about what's going on in the administration and in the city, and how people can know how to participate in this whole One Baltimore effort by knowing who the players are and what some of the initiatives are. Although we read about them, a lot of them go by fast, and to get involved, we got to know more. And thank you. Next, I'm going to ask the the Baltimore City Public Schools, and let me begin with Eric Banzak. Thank you for being here. You're in counseling, you have your master's in counseling education?
Yes, correct. I have a master's in counseling education.
Good for you.
So, thank you.
You work for the Baltimore City Public Schools?
I do. I am currently the coordinator of prevention, intervention, training, and support for the office.
You must be busy.
I am busy, yes. So.
Tell us about it.
Okay, so thank you. So with the resolution of teaching non-conflict violence, resolution is a vital skill for our children to learn. This bill is only going to help strengthen the initiatives already in place for Baltimore City schools. As a result of implementation in different interventions such as restorative practice and PBIS, the following outcomes are often demonstrated in the participating school communities as rebuilding trust and restoring safety within the community, reducing violence and bullying within the school community, repairing harm done by wrongdoing to the greatest extent possible, holding offenders directly accountable to those that have been harmed, providing victims a direct voice in the process of restoring relationships. And in city schools, we recognize that the field of restorative practice has a significant implication for all aspects of society, from family, classrooms, schools, and prisons to workplace, associations, governments, and even whole nations. City schools is therefore proactively pairing and expanding conflict resolution programming with the traditional instructional curriculum. And one way we do that is we take the tools that are within restorative practice and PBIS, and we're able to. I'm sorry.
Say that again.
We take the tools that are within the intervention. So restorative practice, one of the tools they use, and I believe there should be a book that you have, it's called Using Circles Effectively. And what we do is that tool, then we teach the teachers how to use it. And when they take that, they could impair it into their curriculum with their everyday use.
And those are teachers in high school?
In high school and elementary. So restorative practice, we have it in our K-8 schools, and we have it in some of our high schools.
So you have that going on already?
We do, yes.
And how widely spread is it? Basically, teachers are expected to, be trained and then be able to?
Yes. So if a school reaches out to us and says that they would like to use restorative practice as a method to help improve the climate and culture and help build relationships within their community and in their school, what we do is we train them on a 2-day training. The first training is Intro to Restorative Practice, so the staff, the whole staff, when I say the whole staff, that's everybody from custodians to teachers to the administration, so they understand what restorative practice is and how building relationships could help improve the climate and culture. And then the second day is using this one tool, is using circles effectively. And what they do is we train them that if you take 10 minutes, maybe 3 times a week, maybe 5 times a week, it all depends on the administration, and you go over topics such as maybe impaired in the curriculum of a literacy topic, you start building that relationships throughout the school and in your classroom. So one example I like to use is when you go to a professional development, one of the first things they use is an icebreaker. So kind of break the ice, get everybody to know each other, to start building that so the tension is less in the room. So if the teachers start using these circles and start building these communities within inside their classroom, students are going to feel easier and open to talk about different problems, like if a trauma happened, that you could talk to the child and the child will be easier to open up because they understand you, they trust you, and you have that relationship.
My colleague has a question.
Yes.
And before he asks it, let me introduce Councilman Nick Mosby, a member of this committee, has joined us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Councilman Welch.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
In your restorative practices, is it on a proactive basis, or is it responsive or reactionary?
We try to do proactive. We try to do prevention. We try to look at the schools that we try to reach out to principals, and we try to find early warning indicators that might be able to help the schools. So we try to do a proactive approach and a preventative approach. But sometimes we do get the occasional call that, you know, a school needs help because something has happened in the community. So just like with the unsettled rest, one of the things that we pushed out from our office was restorative questions that teachers could ask to circle up the students, because we know student voice is powerful. We know that students want to talk.
The reason I'm asking that question is because I visited all the schools in my district, and when I talked about nonviolent conflict resolution, there wasn't any mention of restorative practices. That's why I wanted to know if is it citywide or.
So we're trying to go citywide. Right now, currently, we are in 24 schools that use some sort of restorative practice method. Right now, we have, I think it's 10 to 14 schools that I think we're going to train in late August. You know, so we're going slowly, but I want to make sure that it's going to be effective. You know, I don't want to push it out too fast, but we are trying to go slowly. We are moving into that road of district-wide.
Would you say it would be a valuable part of a curriculum?
I would say, yes, it would be a valuable part, but I'd also say that, you know, it could be, instead of curriculum, you could use it as a tool to be combined with the curriculum. So this way they're still getting the, you know, the curriculum part.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Mosby, I think, has a question for you. I'm sorry, I just realized.
So,
I have two sign-in lists, and I have one combined hearing. So we're trying to pull that together. And so, Councilman, your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kind of a comment / question. I think part of the problem, like when you say it's in 24 schools, I know for social workers specifically, there's not like a dedicated resource or like a 1-to-1 ratio of that type of resource to the school. So when we say like 24 schools, and what does that mean? How many actual Baltimore City personnel are kind of responsible for ensuring that the training is there and ensuring that we're doing a proactive like evaluation of the children who are most vulnerable to end up with issues?
So out of the 24 schools, so when I say 24 schools, 24 schools got trained in some sort of restorative practice method. So some might have opted to using circles effectively. Some might have used just got the intro to restorative practice, so the teachers know and understand it or has an idea of it. But out of the 24 schools, we currently have 11 schools that chose to take it 2 years. It's called a 2-year whole school change approach, to change it from day one, from the end of 2 years, that they would learn and they would implement this, and the staff would all be on board and all the teachers would implement restorative practice.
Is that the choice of the principal?
Yes.
They have the autonomy to say, we want to go this deep?
Yes, the principal usually reaches out to us and says, yes, I want to bring this to my school. Another part is funding. You know, in the past, it typically cost around $50,000, $50,000 to $60,000 for 2 years. But the one thing that my office was able to do is we were able to bring it in-house. Yeah. So back in 2011, we created a partnership with the International Institute of Restorative Practice, and they have trained us, and now we have 8 certified trainers in my shop that are restorative practice trainers, and they actually gave us their 2-year whole school change approach that we could actually now implement in school. So we tried to take that cost away, so now we could actually go and do it without the funding cost.
I know you can't directly speak to this, and I'm not going to ask you to, but the way that we ensure that this is effective and your team is as effective as possible is having dedicated resources in those schools, especially the schools where we know are more susceptible to having children with these types of issues. I know that this has been a problem with social workers, and it's nothing that you can do about it. It's more of a resource problem with this Baltimore City school system, but that's how we really drive a model to really try to see the results that we want to see in our children.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I will add is we actually created with the International Institute of Restorative Practice, we actually designed a fidelity measure tool that we could go in twice a year and see the progress that it's doing, so we could actually support the school on a better scale, so we could show them where they need to get support or where they need help or where we could support the teachers. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. We have been joined by Chief Marshal Toby Goodwin. Hi, Chief. Welcome to the Baltimore City Council. Chief of School Police, Baltimore City Public School Police. Thank you for being here. He didn't come in response to anything you said, but he came to hear and perhaps to contribute. I have next. So I have two lists. So what I'm going to do is. No. She's next. I have Claudia Webb, Dr. Webb, followed by John Hubbard. Look, if I ever needed backup, you look like the man I'd want. And Chief, are you going to contribute to this? Okay. And then we'll get to the lists of sign-ins. Doctor, would you like to speak with us? Thank you so much. This is Dr. Webb. She has her doctorate in social work from Howard University.
Yes. Thank you very much, Council, for allowing me to speak this evening. I specifically want to talk a little bit in terms of the role of the mental health staff at Baltimore City Public Schools, especially during the unrest, and then a little bit around what we have been doing on an ongoing basis and what we plan to do in the future. The Baltimore City Public School System has approximately 200 plus social workers, or 140 something school psychologists. We have guidance counselors, and then we have the expanded mental health program that we coordinate with in terms of providing mental health services to students in the school system. Every school has a social worker assigned for some period of time in the building that works very closely with the administration and with children in the building around various issues, anything from depression to suicide to kids who are having problems in a family home to community resources. So we're there on a very frequent basis, and we're very actively involved with addressing the needs of the students there. During the riot, one of the things that we did was the civil unrest. One of the things that we focused on was a collaborative effort that we engaged in with all of the mental health clinicians that were assigned to the building. In a particular school, we went in and we went to every classroom in those particular schools. We worked with the administration there. We held group sessions. We held individual sessions. So we met with a lot of some of the parents actually came into the building, and we worked with some of them. So we were very much involved. So every school had some mental health clinician that was there, and we were in the schools for 6 days. During that time, because we wanted to make sure that the situation was stabilized, and then we wanted to follow up after that to make sure that students knew where to come if things were to arise afterwards. So we've been actively trying to be available to students even after the civil unrest. And there have been instances, where things have happened as a result of things that are still ongoing with the case situation, where some students have had some feelings and thoughts about that, and our staff has been working with them. Our social workers, the majority of our social workers, well, all of our social workers are licensed clinicians. They're licensed at the highest clinical level in terms of social work, which is the LCSWC level. The school psychologists are all certified school psychologists that work with us. Some of the guidance counselors do have licensing as counselors as well. We are professionally trained in terms of providing clinical services to students around a variety of issues. Professional development that we've engaged in has been, all of our social workers have been trained in trauma-informed care. They were trained a year ago, and it was in 2014 where all of our social workers were trained. And as Eric was talking about working with the restorative practice, the social workers were scheduled to be trained in restorative practices, all 200 plus social workers. But the snow came in and it was canceled. So our goal this year is to move forward with making sure that every school social worker is trained in restorative practice and implementing that in the schools where they are. There also are crisis teams. We have crisis teams that go out on various issues, things like we hear on the news where a student may have experienced some type of street violence or something of that nature. We have a crisis team that goes to the school when those situations occur. We provide intensive services and treatment and interventions at the school to stabilize the children, and then we do a follow-up with individual students during the weeks or the weeks following that. We are in the midst of developing a specialized crisis team that, especially in the more critical kinds of cases, like for instance, several years ago there were incidences at one of the local high schools where several students kind of were lost in a matter of weeks, one right after the other. And we sent a team in, and so we're working actively now to develop a special crisis team for situations that seem to be more extreme in nature, that sometimes we don't have control over, and usually it overwhelms the basic school team, mental health school team that is there. We are in the midst of collaborative learning opportunities that take place with national organizations to better support effective implementation of our best practices and policies around school mental health. We do a lot of community referrals. Our social workers are well-trained in terms of knowing what the community resources are that are available and connecting families. We are the homeschool community connection, and we take that as a serious mandate. So we try to make sure that, you know, we take care of that three-legged process and make those connections so people can get the services that they need. So it's not just the students in the school, but we do a lot of outreach as well to the families to help with that. The other thing that I really wanted to say that, that I think is important is that we are moving forward. We are planning on we have just recently completed a grant that we're working on with Expanded Mental Health and some other mental health clinicians in the community, partnering with them to try to, what we say, integrate better and work closely together, like we did during the civil unrest that occurred. So we want to get that grant funded so that we could have the training so that we're all learning to work together as a team more effectively in terms of addressing some of the concerns that come up.
Thank you. I think Councilman Mosby?
Yes. Real quick, when you spoke on the social workers in the school, and you talked about the rapid response team in case of there's some type of traumatic experience. Is that, does the principal have to proactively reach out to you, or when we have a child that's lost in Baltimore City schools, do we automatically go into that particular school with that resource?
Usually, sometimes the principal will reach out to us, sometimes the social worker will alert us that there's a situation, and then we talk with the administration. We want to make sure that when we go into schools that the principals know that we're there and that we're there to support them. So we do follow through with, if we get a call from the social worker, we follow through by contacting the principal in that school and saying, there is a concern, we know that you're aware of this, we'd like to, you know, have a team come out. Do you think that your staff is able to, you know, handle it? Most of the time they request the additional supports because they want to make sure that all of the children, you know, have an opportunity to express their feelings around whatever the situation is that has occurred.
Yes. Do you think that there's holes or gaps in that current makeup, like like a child is lost for whatever reason, there's some type of trauma that takes place, and maybe you're not alerted. Do you think that's a possibility or really not? Normally, we're pretty good between the principals having the awareness that you offer those services and the social workers who are out there. They pretty much know to call you. Or you if you can't answer, you just don't know.
Speaking from personal experience,
Yes,
having
ma'am.
worked in the schools, most of the time, if there's a loss in the school, someone knows.
To contact your
Yeah,
office.
that he knows to contact the social workers. The thing about social workers is everybody come to the social workers in the schools because they know that we're the homeschool community connection, so they know they can get resources. So usually we are aware that there is a situation, and we will either intervene individually, and work with the school where we are, or we will seek support from the principal to maybe have the team come out.
Ms. Durrett? Uh-oh,
It's not on his attorney.
that's okay.
Put you on.
No,
I was gonna add that Chief Goodwin here could address the knowledge of when incidents occur, because school police are generally notified almost immediately if something happens, and then that's where the flow starts with our school police officers to notify administration, who then can also notify the school or social workers. That also occurs.
Understood. Okay, thank you. One last question regarding the interaction between your office and the individual schools. Now, I know that we've given a lot of autonomy to our principals to kind of say who can come into the schools and who cannot. Why isn't there the strategy that in the case that there is trauma, that it's almost an automatic dispatchment of your team to the school for the children? I thought you said that the principal has the, I thought, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you said the principal has the choice if you guys come in or not. That's not what you said?
We usually the principals have some kind of input in terms of knowing that we're coming there. So that's what I mean by that. They are aware that we're coming.
You would automatically go. It's not, oh, we want you to come or we don't want you to come in this particular, okay.
We automatically go.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
thank you very much. Thank you. Chief Goodwin? Oh, I'm sorry. Before you get there, Councilman Welch has a question. My apologies.
Okay, sorry.
Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I listen to these wonderful tools that we have and the great interactions that we have. How deep do they go? And what I mean by that, the follow-up is what I'm concerned about. How far are these children followed, and are there measurable outcomes that give us a gauge for how successful that follow-up is?
There is they're pretty deep, because usually our social workers we run grief groups. If there are a group of children that we know are still struggling, there are grief groups that they lead. Sometimes we do just the one-on-one with them and try to work with the parent around making sure that they have additional supports at home. Our social workers have been trained to track their clinical effectiveness, so they actually use different kinds of clinical tools in terms of working with the children to measure where their depression levels are, to measure how they feel about the incident that may have happened, to talk about what their thoughts are in terms of the process that has occurred. And some of these tools that are used are based on the programs that they may implement in terms of working with kids. So we have a lot of different programs that the workers use around conflict resolution, bullying, suicide awareness. So it's a lot going on out there.
You're leading me to another question.
Yes.
And just as they give grades out for their math and their English, are there tools that would measure and be able to give a grade on how effective the nonviolent conflict resolution would be in a curriculum environment?
Yes, the programs that we use actually has, some of them have tracking tools already built into the program that the worker may be using. And so they can actually look at what are the concepts that they want the children to learn and how the children have responded to that. And then they will be able to see whether or not, and compare that to their attendance and their grades and those kinds of things. So we do have tracking mechanisms in place for.
Yeah, just in the adult world, we have a thing called Myers-Briggs that's administered quite often. is there a tool that we could use in the school system as a curriculum tool that would give us a gauge on where students are in terms of their ability to deal with each other in a nonviolent fashion?
Well, I think you would probably have to have what we would say a uniform program if you want to see it across the all of the student populations. So it would have to be something that has been developed for particular age groups that you would be able to track, so that you have some consistency in terms of the data that you would pull from that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chief? And then we will get to the sign-in list.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members
Good
of the
afternoon, Chief.
committee. I just wanted to share in what school police has been doing over the last 7 years in terms of conflict resolution. Upon my arrival, I found out that our team was heavily involved in the GREAT program, as Gang Resistance Education and Training is a federally program that's around the country. Since my arrival, we extended our instructors from, when I arrived, it was 2, we're now up to 6. And what they do is they go into the schools, sporadic schools around the city, and provide classroom instructions every semester. I'm old school. The first half of the school year, they're in one school, and then they go to another school the second half. So we're touching about maybe 1,000 students a year or more. And during those sessions, they have those quality conversations about conflict resolution, character building. Presently, right now, as I'm speaking, we're holding a camp, a great camp, at Charles Barrister in South Baltimore down on Washington Boulevard. It's a 2-week camp. It'll end next week, and part of the classroom instructions is conflict resolution. They do a lot of bike riding, a lot of safety tips. They'll have a closing exercise on next Friday. Additionally, we work with New Psalmist Baptist Church this summer. They had a 4-week great camp. Dare to be Great was the name of their camp, and we've been working with New Psalmist Baptist Church for the last 3 years. So I wanted to share that with you, let you know that in our school system, we are working from the school police perspective on working with conflict resolution around the city as well. So I wanted to share that with you as well.
Well, thank you, and we appreciate that
pleasure.
effort.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Oops. Oh, just hello? Okay. Thanks, Chief. Okay, if you checked off, then you're going to be called to speak. And if you checked off on for both issues, speak now or forever hold your peace. If you've called once and you're on the next sheet, you got to say, already spoke. That's the only way I can figure to do this. So here we go.
Let them know they can speak on both.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
I didn't make myself clear. Thank you. When your turn comes, and you don't have to speak about both issues, but if you wanted to, now that would be your time to speak on both. So you get to speak once, but you can speak about both issues or not. And so the first person who will be the person who we test all these theories on about what you can do would be Van Anderson from the Arch Social Club. Oh, I know the Arch Social Club. It's famous.
Hello, how are you? How you doing, Ms. Clark? And to the City Council and everyone here. I would like to first thank you all for allowing me to speak. And I would like to just make a comment briefly on both bills. I'm in support of both of the bills that are out. Our organization has been working with another organization in public to try to de-escalate violence. And the approach that we have been taking was to, number one, push for people in the community, if they have a conflict or if they have a beef, number one, don't kill somebody over it. Don't be interested in killing somebody because somebody stepped on somebody's Air Jordans or somebody bumped into somebody or something like that. If you do need to resolve a conflict, go back to old school. You just settle it with your hands. You have a little fist fight, and then after that, it's over with. You know, no banking and no coming back with other objects and stuff like that. This is the thing that we have been pushing in order to try to de-escalate the violence. And so we definitely are in support of a program that's going to try to get youth to have another way for resolving conflict. Even me, myself, right now, right in front of our organization. We're at Ground Zero at Pennsylvania and North.
I know.
And
You're right in the
after those
middle.
riots, it's gotten kind of wide open. We have a open air drug market right out front. I was walking out the building, walking towards the car, and these three, what looked like to me, drug dealers walked by, and one of them bumped into me. I turned around and looked, and he was mean mugging me like, "What you gonna do about it?" And in that split second, I turned around and I really had some other words that that I had for him for being disrespectful. But instead, during that brief moment, I said, "Excuse me, sir." I looked at him without fear and said, "Excuse me, sir." And his immediate response to me was, "Excuse me, sir." And so that was from some upbringing and some training that I had gotten when I was young from my family and from the school system that says if you're walking down the hallway and somebody bumps into you, you excuse yourself. Just plain old courtesy and plain old manners. And I believe during that split second, that was what saved me possibly from getting into a conflict with these guys that were out there. And what I'm saying is that those kind of things, if they could be taught to our youth, then perhaps our youth can be able to use some of those tools in order to be able to resolve some of their conflicts. On the other issue, in terms of the trauma, I was talking with one of my neighbors the other day. She's 65 years old. And she said that at about 11 o'clock, I guess about 6 months ago, she was walking from the corner store, and some guy held his hand out like that and started shooting, and she could see the blood and the brains and the skull tissue splattering around the car, inside of the car. The guy kept on shooting. She started running, and she said the guy kept on shooting until he ran out of bullets. She ran down the street, and she was just out of breath. She fell down. She couldn't get back up. And she said her heart felt like it was about to pop out of her chest. And so, as she was speaking about this, I could see her begin to shake, and I could see her begin to hyperventilate. And I could see where, if this had an impact on her, what kind of impact would it be having on our children be going through this? So because of that, I'm in support of both of the bills, and I thank y'all for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. I know the social club because of the late, great Victorine Q. Adams, who served here in the Baltimore City Council so admirably for so long. And,
yes, ma'am.
A great lady. Thank you.
I thank you. We're still there, and I'll forward you some of our shows that we're still having.
Okay, good. All right, so Dr. Lorig Sharkudian.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for introducing these bills. My name is Lorig Sharkudian. I'm the Executive Director of Community Mediation Maryland, and currently the Acting Director of the Community Mediation Baltimore program. We've provided nonviolent conflict resolution services for over 20 years across the city in a number of settings and contexts, from working in the schools in a preventative way to prisoner reentry, on the other end of the spectrum. My written testimony, I have included an extensive lit review that highlights the damage of violence and conflict and bullying in schools, but also the damage of exclusionary discipline, which tends to be a natural response, which of course builds into the school to prison pipeline. And I'm not going to go through that right now, but I did distribute it in advance, and if anyone's interested in that, I have additional copies. I think it reinforces the need for this bill and for as much conflict resolution and preventative violence prevention work that we can do in the schools. What I did want to do is talk a little bit about the conflict resolution training that we currently offer and some lessons from 15, 20 years of working in conflict resolution training in a number of settings. So right now, we work in a handful of schools in Baltimore City providing a 4 to 8 hour conflict resolution curriculum. And it is a curriculum, it's actually a statewide curriculum that we've developed that is offered around the state. And it is aligned with the Common Core standards. And so what we're able to do is to work with the teachers. When we're going to be working in a classroom, we're able to be flexible work with the teachers to look at what Common Core standards we have, which ones they need, and design the agenda to work with them and to support it integrated into the curriculum. So I appreciate the idea of integrating the skills into the curriculum as opposed to a separate standalone thing. And I think it's very possible to be done, and we've done it in some contexts. Some of the things, though, that I want to highlight, I think that often when there's a broader mandate to bring in conflict resolution in a very in a comprehensive way, it is easy to find a number of sort of off-the-shelf curricula and sort of hand it out, and then you do it and you check the box and you're done. And so it's there's this danger of check the box, we did that, and not actually have something meaningful. And so I would offer community mediation services, whether or not you choose for us to be the trainers, which we're happy to be in many more schools than we're currently working in, but we'd also just offer our services for free, just to have dialogue as the curriculum are being developed, and to share our insight from the training that we've done over many years. One of the things in particular that I think is tough is there's a lot of curricula that sort of highlights and focuses on walk away and let it go and avoidance. What we try to do with the curriculum that we teach is to really help people be thoughtful. Like, is this so dangerous that what I need to do in this moment is walk away to be safe? But that's not the only choice. And sometimes what students struggle with is this idea that if walking away is the only choice, how do I ever stand up for myself? So we spend a lot of time teaching skills to stand up for yourself in a way that's also respectful of other people in the conflict. And I think that curriculum that really sort of support that are important. Two other things that I just want to highlight as you're thinking about integrating into the broader system, as some people have already discussed, not just having the skills, but then also having specific ways to deal with conflicts as they come up is important. So as students have the skills and start to integrate them, the schools that we're working in, we also provide the mediation services. So if they go and they try to use the skills and they don't feel like they're successful in resolving it, they have a very specific and quick place to go to get some assistance resolving it, and that sort of integrates it into the process. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that in the schools we've been working with, this year we started collecting more disciplinary referral data. And so the schools that we've been working with this past school year, the reports from the teachers are that disciplinary referrals decreased on average 28% among the students who took the training from the period from the beginning of the school year till the training occurred to after the training ended and to the end of the school year. And that's from just 4 to 8 hours of training. And so I would hope that more training than just 4 to 8 hours would be offered, but that 4 to 8 hours could offer that much of a drop in disciplinary referrals, I think highlights really the potential for this. Again, not only to decrease the violence, but also to decrease the exclusionary disciplinary referrals that's such a problem. So I'm happy to answer questions and share testimony if folks need additional information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kevin Aduna? I'm working off a couple of different lists.
Madam Chair, if I may ask for Kevin Aduna happened to sign in first. He's one of my students, and if we could present together.
And what is your name, sir?
My name is Kirk Crawley.
Yes, you're on
and
the list.
Shemaya Artis, who's also present with me. Okay.
Of course.
So I would present first, and they have a piece that they would like to share.
Just remember, we've got
It'll be brief.
we've got an hour left, and
Oh, it won't be that?
no.
Yeah.
I mean for everybody.
Right.
Yeah. But sure, thank you for being here, sir. And you are Mr. Crawley, and you're from Franklin Square?
Yes. My name is, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, distinguished guests. My name is Kirk Crawley. I teach social studies at Franklin Square Elementary Middle School. Okay. I also am a licensed attorney. I've been an attorney since 1988.
Well, we will not hold that against you.
Some clients did, but most don't. I'm also the president of the Board of Trustees of the Coppin Heights Community Development Corporation, housed right within the area that's most affected. One of the things that we came here to speak on is in support of the mediation bill. Now, to say we need mediation is, how do I put this? It's a foregone conclusion. Our kids need to understand how to incorporate the skills of mediation. We have been very successful with our 7th and 8th graders at Franklin Square because we do some of the items that have been talked about today. The restorative circle. In my class every morning, they gather in circles to discuss issues. We were discussing issues about the Freddie Gray situation and what was going on before the riot. After the riot occurred, we didn't have a problem within our class because we already understood and were examining the evidence and the facts and the positions. So again, practices like that, but that didn't come down as a part of a curriculum. That came down as a desire of this particular teacher to bring about more self-regulation among our students. We were self-regulating, we were discussing, we were making decisions collectively as a group before the riots. After the riots came, we were able to come together in the town hall and continue to discuss the issues. The young man to my right, my left, Mr. Aduna, he's one of our executive leaders of our student council. He's also one of the leaders on the JROTC. He's also one of the captains on the lacrosse team. He is also, you got too many titles. Very effective. Miss Shamaya Artis, she's also the head of our student court. We have a student court so our students can bring their concerns to their peers. I facilitate the court, but I'm the only adult involved in the whole process. And I sit and give advice to the panel. But each of the 4 classes I teach have a representative on this court that hears concerns. Now, so we don't encroach within the responsibilities of the principal and the school, we created our own incentive system that they control. Mr. Aduna and his panel determines what are the requirements. Do you work, disruptions, anything like that could disqualify you from receiving these incentives. If you have a dispute over that, you bring it to Ms. Artis's court, you state your claim. They have peer monitors that monitors their own behavior. They present their evidence, and as a panel, they discuss the appropriate behaviors, what should have happened, what didn't happen, and whether or not you should still receive the incentives. All of this funded completely by their own efforts in bringing in community partners without a penny coming from the school system. With mediation, with peer mediation, I can take these young people to the next level. There are programs where they can be certified. I know I have former students who've been certified at the high school level as peer mediators. This same group put together and they do anti-bullying programs for the elementary school in our own school. Think what they can do with peer mediation training. Think the impact that these young people who stand before you can make with this type of part of the curriculum, because it's not. I can teach them financial literacy, that's part of the curriculum. I can teach them everything about history, but I would love to teach them to be agents of change in their own community. So I'm gonna stop at this point. We're speaking in reference to mediation, but I will say that this young lady can talk about trauma. This is a young lady that was severely beaten by another student for no reason, but she still came back to school, black-eyed, bruised, and she continued on, and she's now in the Junior State's Attorney's Program, as well as still our vice president and one of our court members. So, Mr. Aduna.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello. I'm Kevin Aduna, and I am the leader of all the things Dr. Crawley said. Yeah, and I also like to add on the topic of peer mediation, where what that means to me is self-regulation for all the students in the school. So in our class, we have executive councils, court, everything, almost everything a county school will have. And what we do is we discuss problems, like what a president would do, President Obama, what he does. So any problems in the classroom, the students will write a note to me, a complaint, talk about it. We'll discuss the punishment. If we catch them in the act, they'll be, we have dojo points, and they'll get amount of points taken off for the thing that they done. And then if they have a problem with that, they can also take it to the court, Shamaya, and we'll have a court session over it. I'm not gonna lose. I got great fake attorneys in my class. So any problem we'll discuss, we go over everything. And then we have the executive council, which have meetings on Monday, which we come together and discuss all the problems that's in our classes. And when we discuss them, we come up with rules together. And after that, we report back to our classrooms and tell the whole class and see if they agree with it. And then that also plays an effect in self-regulation, because that also gives us a chance to not just let teachers watch over us, to be policed, that we should be able to do everything ourselves, to give us a good amount of responsibility. So as we go out in the future, that we'll know how to take care of ourselves. And as this self-regulation thing goes, it travels throughout the whole school. It changed my life. It changed lots of scholars in our school's lives. Like, I've noticed in JRTC, I was the executive officer in charge of everything, and I brought that to there too. Ms. Lynch, First Sergeant Ruff Lynch, she allowed us to do the same thing Dr. Crawley here is doing. And like, I want this to go out through all the other schools, so Baltimore City could be a safer place, and our young youth will learn how to be responsible on their own.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Artis, did you have something you'd like to say?
Well, again, with the points and helping us, like, we all, like, in class,
You can pull that, yeah.
well, we all, like, with the point system, we, like, with work and behavior issues, like, a lot of points, like,
Gotcha.
well, like with the negative points, like, I mostly deal with that with, like, behavioral problems and, like, a lot of the problems that go on in the school building, like, a lot of the petitions come to me and stuff.
Really?
And like, I can read over them and take them to the court, and we'll discuss them over and, like, make our rule on them. And, like, this,
Very good.
and, like, it's making a big effect on, like, how the kids' behavior is changing around, because, like, we have a lot of activities based on these points, and a lot of the kids that wants to participate, like, their behavior changed a lot. And
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Ms. Nzinga Onifera L. I know she's on the first page of both.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Honorable City Council people and honorable guests and our administration, for our police and our school system, everybody. Mayor's office. We're all here today on something that's very near and dear to my heart. Let me start with 1992. My fiance was murdered by young people, 16 and 21 years old. And this also happened to me again with my best friend in 2006, young people. When I was a victim of trauma, I realized one particular thing that helped me, and this was a passage that I read, and it said, in order to rid yourself of grief, this came from Jesus' 18 missing years in Egypt. Well, he wasn't just in Egypt, but this is about him, when he said, in order to rid yourself of grief, you have to reach out and help somebody else dry their tears. And then your ministry of sorrow becomes a ministry of joy. That was the banner that I took on, because I didn't understand why God would take my man from me, my youngest child's father, and it was a very difficult year. I'm very spiritually based. It happened to me at 40. I thought I was real wise, but I lost my mind. I honestly lost my mind. So it dawned on me, if I'm 40 years old and murder made me lose my mind for a solid year, what would the effects be on a young person? 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old. So I had to ask myself a question, because in that first year after you do experience murder, there's a lot to deal with. I had 4 daughters. They were clearly very afraid because our protector was murdered. So I had to try to figure it out. And one of the things that I did in my soul searching during that year is I asked myself one major question, because I did hate young people for a minute, but I couldn't stay there. I did hate God for a minute, but I couldn't stay there. I asked myself, we're the ones who are responsible for the young people. And I said to myself, what are you doing to prevent this from happening to somebody else? That was my entree into this work. I began to first try to see what I could do. I've been an entrepreneur all my life, and one of the things that I said is that the core of so much violence is poverty. And people will sell drugs so that they can have a sense of, meeting the American dream. And so I began to think about that, and I said, well, let me just back up. The day after he was murdered, I passed out, and I had a vision. And this vision showed me gathering the community and working to build different kinds of businesses and gathering the children and sharing that. In 2005, that vision came to pass. I ended up beginning to do programs all over the place, trying to figure out what worked. I started at Dunbar High School. Mary Pat was one of the people who in the community supported the efforts that we were doing. We had all different types of businesses. And so we left there, we went to Morgan State. They hired us to do an entrepreneur program to see what that would do with the recidivism rate with young people. It was proven to be extremely effective. I was hired for a summer program. I ended up being there for 3 years. And we did actual business. So a lot of the implosion shirts from the city when they blew in the projects and all of the different work that the city was doing, they contracted our young people to give us orders and things. After that, I started a group home. That was probably my craziest effort, 24-hour business. Dealing with young people wasn't the issue, it was the adults. But I worked for, our agency dealt with older youth, 16 to 20, who were in foster care or in the juvenile justice system. I'm saying all that just to say that I have a lot of experience in the area of violence prevention and trauma. So anyway, I didn't have a degree. So the state told me that if I was going to run that program, I needed to have the correct documentation. Anyway, I went to school and began to study this problem. What I found in my 280-page thesis was that, first of all, the best solution anywhere is a concerned adult in their right mind, because I'm going to put that part in there, working with a group of young people. The most effective strategy of everything. This gentleman is a living example of when you spend time and you invest, you have the product, these young people that can come and they're doing things to help themselves. So anyway, that leads me to the beautiful opportunity that I had for over 5 years to be at the Lake Clifton campus. We were the program was called Entrepreneur Training University Community School, and we did the whole gamut. We did community involvement, we did entrepreneurship, but the biggest thing that we did on a regular basis was our Alive and Free, which is, they call it Street Soldiers in the past, but now it's the Alive and Free movement, which was very simple, to keep young people alive and free from incarceration. The model is built on the public health model. I hear us talking about disease. This is a disease. In 2001, the Surgeon General declared this youth violence as a disease. And the person whose model we adopted helped inform that research for the Surgeon General to come out with that, because we had a school teacher and a school counselor that came together and said, we're tired of burying our young people. So they started interviewing the young people. How are you thinking? Because I don't care what we do, if we don't deal with the mentality of young people and we don't talk to them, like we come in with this and that, and this is packaged and this is cute and all this other stuff. But when you're dealing with an inner city child that may not have had anything to eat, may have watched his mother deal with a onslaught of men coming in and out of the house, has no father, you know, cutesy little things don't really help, especially the older children. You need to be able to give them a chance to talk about what they're dealing with. We have something called AFP, anger, fear, and pain. In this model, we talk about throwing up, because we say that if you don't deal with your AFP, your anger, fear, and pain, it will deal with you. And you can't control how or when. We use an example of a balloon. You blow into the balloon, and you keep blowing into the balloon. But as we all know, the balloon ultimately bursts. And so we ended up doing this model. We had a lot of involvement from the city. We did an international conference. We had people here from all the way from South Africa and all over the country. So the one thing I want to say up front is it is so absolutely necessary to use the school base to deliver programming, because that's where the children are. Yes, we have them out in the street and not going to school, some of them, but your majority of children are sitting in that school system. What everybody's talked about is training. We need training to be able to understand adults, to understand the children. Like, we don't understand. Our generation has turned its back on the children because we're scared of them. We don't know how to talk to them. You know, our thing is just pants are sagging or you're not talking right. So we as adults have to change our mindset, and we have to help them to be able, as the man from Arch Social Club talked about, his parents passed on to him. And then we as a generation have not passed on stuff. We took character education out of the school system. That was crazy. We took citizenship out of the school system. That was crazy. So I just want to say that I am totally in support of, I really want to see this rolled out through the school system. So let me move over to the trauma, because I signed up for both things.
Really? I mean, we have so many more people to talk, missing. Go ahead, but.
Okay, well, I'm getting ready to wrap up.
Please, yeah.
I just wanted to.
I think you're eloquent, and I know you do what you say. I just have such a long list,
right,
and we have half an hour left.
50 more people.
Well, you're going to pick up where I leave off, because I have to leave at 6, but.
Okay. The only statement that I wanted to make was basically dealing with two things. And I don't know if people know it, but exposure to violence, and this is according to a study that was done right here in Baltimore, exposure to violence leaves children, the effects of it is beyond post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know if people knew that, but that means that the people that have been to war, when they come back kind of screwed up, our children are worse than that. That's what the studies show. Also, another study that shows about trauma, it talks about the fact that when you're exposed to trauma, your immune system, especially if you're frequently exposed, your immune system shuts down, and you are now predisposed for all the major diseases. So if we don't do something soon, because we need everybody, we don't just need one thing, we need everybody. And collectively, I believe we can get this done. I'm very much in support of both of these processes, because we're not doing enough work. Even though we're doing some work, we're not doing enough work. So I just wanted to say, and then we're not doing, we need to look deeper and not just something developed in a college or something, a model like that. But I think that one of the major resources are those of us who have experienced trauma. All of these murder victims have families and friends. And if these people, us, are gathered together to be trained, not just your professionals, we're some of the most effective people because why? We have a stake in this. I looked at the mothers of murdered sons on television, and they said they don't want their children's name to go in vain. So I'm saying that this is another source, another idea. I will be submitting this in to the new funding that's out because we have to do something. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work. Miss Lenora A. Dawson? She left already. Okay. Dr. Brittany Renee Parham? Oh, good. Ms. Parham? Doctor? Oh, good. And after her will be Ms. Schober, Melissa Schober. Afterward, it's next.
Good evening. Sorry for my pause. I was surprised to hear my middle name. Well, good evening. Thank you for allowing me the space and opportunity to just say a little bit about the trauma bill in particular. I guess my one goal is just to highlight the need. So my role, I'm from the University of Maryland School of Medicine, Center for School Mental Health. I provide mental health services to the school, to Franklin Square Elementary Middle School. So I know Dr. Crowley and Ms. Murray, who you'll hear from in a little bit. And our role is to provide a continuum of evidence-based services in the school. So basically what that means is that we provide services for the entire school all the way down to the individual student and their families. Now, if it's okay, I just want to take a poll in the room really quick and see what people think about the rates of trauma in our community. So who in here thinks the rate is 25% or below, that our children are experiencing trauma? 25%?
Wait a minute. Excuse
me.
Oh,
can you hear me? I'm sorry.
No. You're being recorded.
Oh.
On video.
Talking to the mic.
Oh, I'm talking to the mic.
When people are turning around and look,
Oh, you can't hear me. I'm sorry. So I won't do my poll then. Never mind.
Use your microphone.
I'll just say it. Okay. So let's say in a national sample of children, we expect that about 2/3 of students have experienced some trauma. Here in Baltimore City, that number, as we can anticipate, is higher. 80% of our students are experiencing trauma. And that's not just one. It's common that our students here in Baltimore experience multiple traumas. Studies show that if individuals experience 4 or more traumas, they are 100% likely to develop PTSD symptoms. So we are dealing with a really big problem, heavily under-resourced in the schools, and that's just a common kind of problem that I'm sure a lot of individuals here are familiar with. So I'll just say, from my perspective, the impact of trauma, let's say, so 80% of our students are experiencing trauma. Common academic impact include student and academic disengagement, absenteeism, depression, suicidal ideation, and actual committing suicide. We also, of course, if we are able to keep the students in school some way through middle school, we often see them drop out by 10th grade. In general, there are services that we can provide to help our students in the school. I personally see clients and provide TFCBT, which is trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. I see a number of clients for individual services and their families. Additionally, we have larger approaches, so CBITS, cognitive behavioral interventions for trauma in schools. We do have the interventions. Evidence shows that these services do help prognosis in the future. A lot of our students go on to be successful in life if we intervene, but early. So it's really important that we think about the need, 80% of our students experiencing trauma, and how we're going to serve them. I will keep it brief because I know we have a lot of people, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work. Yes. Senator, welcome. Would you like to speak? We're very pleased to have you here. I'm sure everybody would welcome you and like to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. I actually came because I was, my councilman, Councilman Welsh, told me about this legislation. And while I think all of this is really important, that we look at how do we deal with our children when they face trauma, that we teach conflict resolution, I just want us to remember that we have a really serious problem in Baltimore as it relates to our children. I heard the federal government say yesterday at the opening of the Freddie Gray Center that there is no level of lead paint poisoning that is acceptable for any child. And in Baltimore City, as you well know, we have so many children who are suffering from lead paint poisoning. And as a result, we see a lot of violent behavior that takes place. And oftentimes, and I know this to be true, that most teachers come to school to teach because that's what they want to do, is teach. But yet they find themselves in battle from time to time dealing with children who are suffering from not just the recent violence that occurred, but the violence that occurs in their communities, the violence that occurs in their neighborhoods, the violence that occurs in their home. And while, we want our parents, and many of them do, take time with our young people to talk to them about their behavior and what it is they need to be doing so that they can access the services and so forth that are provided. I think oftentimes many people in our communities and throughout our city aren't even aware of all the services that are provided in the city. I think about, for example, at the Baltimore Design School, where we have a full-time counselor on a regular basis. I don't know if every school has that. I think about how well protected some schools are and some people don't feel like it, because I know at the Baltimore Design School we have services by our school police on a regular basis. But the fact that we have to have those kinds of services in our community certainly says a lot in terms of what we need to do and how we need to focus. Not only do teachers come to school to teach, you have to think about those young people who come to our schools to learn. But yet they too are confronted with the violent behavior or the activities of a few that make it difficult for the many. And so whatever it is that we look to do, whether it is increasing recreational facilities throughout our city, whether it is building conflict resolution into our curriculums in our school system, whether it is looking at how do we make sure that all of our children in our city are tested to make sure that they aren't suffering from lead paint issues. Because once you are able to diagnose that and you know what the issues are, then it makes it a lot easier to begin to deal with some of those issues that these children are facing. And I don't think that we can say with any degree of confidence that we've been able to do that throughout our system, that we've tested our children, that we know that, what their issues may or not be, or that we've put counselors in every school building so that when children are faced with issues and problems, that they know how to deal with them. And sometimes we don't even in our own system, know how to approach, because so maybe it's not just the children. Maybe we're looking at the counselors, because the problems today in some ways are very different from the problems of yesterday. And oftentimes we want to lean back on what we used to do when sometimes what we need to do is revamp what we're doing. So I would just ask the council, one, to look carefully at the resolutions and the legislation that's before us, and to make sure that as we address these particular issues, that we take the whole child into consideration, that we not just only look at violence that recently occurred, but try to understand what is going on in the lives of many of our children who are suffering throughout our city and throughout our communities. And I just want to say just a few things about the violence that we just went through. By no means do we condone violence in any way. But it has been said, and I think Martin Luther King Jr. said it best, because protests are the voices of those who feel they've been unheard. And while by no means we condone violence, I would have to applaud Baltimore's behavior the days following the looting, those who took advantage of a bad situation. Because for the most part, and I know the national media said it to me, I think that we showed our issues or our concerns about the issues that our communities are facing in a very peaceful way. Because if you spent time on North Avenue, as my councilman did, or on Penn, you would have saw what was going on in our communities by the protesters. So let me just conclude by saying that we've got a lot of work to do in our city, but I know that we have the capacity and the capability and the propensity to be able to do it. But paying attention to our children is the greatest responsibility that we all have. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Pugh, very much, and thank you for being in the middle of the youth and the troubles and visibly helping to get them resolved. It meant a lot to all of us. What? I'm doing this list, and then I'll get to that, okay? Miss Melissa Schober. Okay. All right. Miss Folks, Denise Folks. Michael Millette. He's on 2 sheets.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you for this opportunity to come in and speak. My name is Michael Mellett.
I'm sorry.
I live in Holland's Roundhouse I live in the Holland's Roundhouse neighborhood.
Neighborhood, not
Yes.
in the Roundhouse.
Yes, not in the Roundhouse, although across the street from the Roundhouse.
Good for you.
But this past Monday night, we had an association meeting, and Councilman Welsh came to our meeting, and I'd like to commend him for sitting through the meeting. They made
it was a long meeting?
the councilman wait till the end of the meeting
He's
to speak.
associated with long meetings
Yes,
all the time,
yes.
yes.
And I knew it must be important for him to have to put himself through that. So thank you for doing that and sitting through that. It was a long meeting. But anyway, after Councilman spoke and we concluded the meeting, I heard what he had to say about these resolutions and the plans to introduce this curriculum. The first thing I said to him, it was a game changer. It was a game changer. It could be a game changer. And I said I would like to come and support you, and that's why I'm here. But I'll be very brief. I lived in Ireland, the north of Ireland, for 5 years, and I've seen what conflict resolution can do for a community. And, you know, absolutely, to introduce this and get this into the curriculum for kids in kindergarten, it will just be amazing going up through 12th grade. And I'm just a homeowner here. I'm the president of the Irish Railroad Workers Museum in West Baltimore. And I just wanted to come today to say this is the kind of thing that really has the ability to change Baltimore for the good. And there's an old Irish saying, upstairs for thinking, downstairs for dancing. And it would be wonderful, an idea like this upstairs, we do this correctly, 20 years, we're all dancing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jones? I'm sorry, what's her first name? Aaliyah Jones.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I bring you greetings on the behalf of Bon Secours Hospital and our CEO, Dr. Samuel Ross. My name is Dr. Aaliyah Jones. I am the chair of the Department of Behavioral Health at Bon Secours Hospital in Southwest Baltimore.
We love Bon Secours.
Pardon me?
We love Bon Secours.
Oh, good. Well, Bon Secours loves Baltimore. I am a psychiatrist who specializes in addiction psychiatry. I completed residency training through the University of Maryland Medical System in concert with the Shepherd Pratt Hospital System. I have proudly and gladly served the community of Baltimore, particularly those with mental illness and problems with addiction, for the past 14 years. At Bon Secours Hospital, we have a number of services for children. In particular, we have a partial hospitalization program, as well as an outpatient mental health clinic that sees children as well as adults. We see children as young as 4 or 5 years old, and throughout the adolescent spectrum, graduating our children to adult services when they turn 18 years of age. Being a treatment provider for children that live in the 21215, 161723, and 29 zip codes, we are directly familiar with the impact of trauma on the life of Baltimore's youngest citizens, and we help families and schools manage daily the challenges and problems that arise from children who do not know how to manage interpersonal conflict. I am sure that we here are quite familiar with the scope of violence in Baltimore City. However, when questioning the necessity of conflict resolution skills and trauma counseling, there is no argument more compelling than the scope of violence that our communities, that our children encounter on a daily basis. Very briefly, Baltimore has a crime index rating of 3, meaning that we are safer than only 3% of cities in the United States of America. Stated in other words, 97% of cities in the United States are safer than Baltimore. There are 8,884 violent crimes committed in Baltimore on an annual basis. Here, your chances of becoming a victim of violent crime are 1 in 70 residents. In the entire state of Maryland, the ratio is 1 in 211 residents. In comparison to the entire United States, where the murder rate per 1,000 is 0.04, in Baltimore it is 0.37. Whereas the incidence of rape is 0.34, in Baltimore it is 0.68. And whereas the rate of assault is 2.29, in Baltimore it is 7.19. Not only do our children live in a violent environment, they are direct victims of violence and trauma as well. In fact, from June 2013 to 2014, 228 children in Baltimore were treated at a pediatric trauma center, representing 24% of all the children in the entire state of Maryland seen at a trauma center. Living in a violent community is not inconsequential for anyone, especially for children who are vulnerable, even when they may not appear to be. As a result of being born where they were born, they have a greater risk of having emotional, behavioral, and academic woes, as well as anxiety, depression, disruptive and aggressive behavior, substance use, school disengagement, and academic failure, all of which affects the type of lives that they will have the opportunity to live. The data is compelling, and unfortunately, it is true. We work in a very challenging environment in a very troubled city during a very troubled time, and so do our children. However, we are not without a means to combat our reality. The 2 bills proposed today can be a huge turning point in giving our children what they need to thrive in a hostile environment. We can teach them how to resolve their conflicts differently than what they see on the streets and perhaps even in their own homes. And we can provide lasting emotional support and impart healthy coping skills among those who have been victims in the broadest sense of the word of trauma and violence. As a physician, and particularly as a psychiatrist, it is sad to me that it took a situation like what happened in April for us to finally come to the place where we are demanding that our children's experiences of trauma be addressed, when the violence in this city has been staggering for decades. I am not a child psychiatrist, but rather an adult addiction psychiatrist who would have loved for her patients to have received the support that they needed 10 to 20 years ago when their best friend or parent or favorite family member was murdered or stabbed or beaten or overdosed. Perhaps if they had had the emotional support they needed, they would have been taught a greater range of methods to manage their emotional distress, methods that did not include substance use and the resultant problems and re-victimization that comes with that lifestyle. Perhaps if someone was watching them, they would have noticed their struggle and got them help before they became gripped with depression or suicidal tendencies or racked with anxiety or sadness and grief. The demands in these bills are necessary components to turning the tide of violence in the city of Baltimore, and they should be passed. And should they be passed, it is my sincere hope and prayer that once implemented, they will remain in place until the crime statistics of the city of Baltimore match those of her neighbors. At least until then, they will continue to be needed. Thank you very much for your time and your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
For your testimony.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, has Sandra Murray spoken? I don't recall that. Are you Sandra Murray? Excellent.
Hi, it's Sonia Sanders Murray. I'm a Baltimore City
Which
School.
is it?
Sonia Sanders.
Sonia.
Sonia.
I'm sorry.
Sonia Sanders Murray.
Oh, gotcha. I'm sorry. Okay, you're on.
Okay. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with Baltimore City Schools, and particularly at Franklin Square Elementary Middle School. I was asked to come today with Dr. Crawley, who I work very closely with at the school. I am here to talk about both peer mediation and trauma, and I'll be very brief because I know we're running out of time. But I have taught peer mediation and conflict resolution in Baltimore City Schools since I first became one of their social workers, and I know that it works. I have trained students, fifth graders, to mediate for younger children, and then in the middle school to train different students to be able to mediate situations. And we pick and choose which situations they can mediate. Anything that's high risk, like bringing a weapon to school or bringing drugs to school or serious assault, we turn over to administration. But a lot of the conflict that goes on really between students is a lot of student-student kind of conflict, and most of it happens not at school. It's Facebook and other social media, things that happen on the weekend and after school that then flows over into the schools. And those conflict resolution and peer mediation groups and sessions really work. Dr. Crawley and I have a lot of ideas about implementing some things into Franklin Square this coming school year. So we're very hopeful that this bill would pass. Regarding trauma, as Claudia spoke, as a school social worker, trauma is every day. My chair in my office is filled not only with students, as much as it is also with staff who come in due to the trauma that they're experiencing relating to what's going on with many of the students. One of the biggest things I try to tell teachers in the beginning of the year when we come back to school is to look at the situations that many of our students are coming from. And while they're trying to teach, for many of our students, the last thing on their mind when they're in school is learning. They're dealing with where they're going to get their next meal. Is the lights going to be on when I get home? Will I have a clean uniform for tomorrow? All those kind of situations. As school social workers, we are extremely busy, and our hands are always full doing things. Brittany Parham didn't get a chance to give you two statistics regarding the symptoms of trauma, but $220 million each day is spent regarding trauma treatment. And states spend up to $5.7 billion each year on juvenile detention centers. Just to give you an idea of how necessary both of these bills are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lauren Abramson. And she'll be followed by Talia Gillespie. Does that sound familiar? You're on.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be briefer than I even intended to be, and I have some materials to leave with you. I am the founding director of the Community Conferencing Center. We have been providing restorative justice and restorative practices for 18 years in Baltimore City schools and in neighborhoods, and as a court diversion for young people who get arrested and diverting them from court. Each year, we work with hundreds of young people, mostly of color, have successfully diverted misdemeanor and felony offenses related to school-related incidents of harm by diverting them from the system and bringing the young people together with those who they've harmed, with their family members and everybody involved in the incident, and letting them resolve it themselves. We have, over 18 years, included 18,000 Baltimore residents in this process. 95% of the time, these groups are able to resolve the matters themselves. They come up with a written agreement that they abide by, and we have done research that has shown that there is 60% lower reoffending than if they went through the system. So that's at the responsive end that the councilman mentioned. At the proactive end, we have a menu of restorative practices, professional development workshops that I'll leave with you. I would hasten to add, to join into the voices that it's important that our adults change the behavior. If we want the young people to change their behavior, adults in schools need to act in ways that are caring, that help young people when they make mistakes instead of focusing on punishing them, provide them with opportunities to learn from their mistakes, because everybody here makes mistakes. We're all human. And so restorative justice and restorative practices are extremely important. We have trained over 3,000 Baltimore City teachers in something called the Daily Wrap. It's a simple circle that provides a space for young people to talk about what's important to them. And the teachers routinely who use this, even once a week, routinely report that they spend half the amount of time dealing with disruptive behavior because the young people feel that they're listened to, they have a voice, and the adults are connected with their students. So the last thing, I'll leave this with you. We've got data on our work. I would just like to say that I'm not a big fan of curricula, that intellectually to learn the concepts of conflict resolution is one thing, but in the heat of moments, it's not about intellectually figuring it out, it's what's happening emotionally. And unless we as human beings, whether we're young or old, we need to learn through doing it. We need to learn through practicing it. And we have seen in these circles that in conflicts that come up, in being able to handle it right there and then using daily wrap circles or community conferencing circles, that they're able to learn skills that are incredibly valuable.
I'm not going to keep you long. I just have one question. I'm just the opposite of you. I like curriculum and curricula, but you talked about having real-world experiences to hone those kind of non-conflict. Wouldn't that be utilized as part of a curriculum to have role-playing? When I went for my community mediation certificate, one of the things we did in getting to that point was to actually play roles in various situations of conflict to get at what the root causes were and to move issues forward.
I think absolutely. That's the beginning of skill building, and I wouldn't say that we don't need curricula. I mean, we need both. I really believe we need both, but you know, I have heard reports of, you know, this isn't the best example, but somebody was just, a high school student was telling me that their high school showed a show about bullying, and so many students were crying in looking at this video, how terrible it was. And she said the very girls that were crying 2 days later were bullying someone. That unless there's an experiential way to incorporate and really combine both the head and the heart and to learn how to behave differently.
What you know with feeling becomes your truth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much.
You.
Don't hit me. Yeah.
I love their testimony.
Yeah, right. Ms. Gillespie?
Hello, everybody. My name is Talia Gillespie, and I work as an education specialist with community mediation. So for the past year, I've had the pleasure of going into about 10 different Baltimore City public schools and teaching conflict resolution to kids as young as 2nd grade up to portions of high school. And through my experience, I've learned that this is very important. It's something that definitely most of the schools need. And one classroom in particular, I got to work with 2nd grade students, and they are aware of the problem themselves. They actually went on the internet and Googled us and said, we need help with the way that we deal with our problems in our classroom. And so they asked us to come in. When we first came to the classroom, the kids would say things like, words don't work. And through the methods that we taught them, which is like a lot of experiential learning as well as just traditional curriculum, they were able to see that they can use their words to change what's happening in their classroom. we saw disciplinary referrals drop down to about 40%, drop down about 40% in this particular classroom because the teacher was able to use the lessons that we gave the students in the class and work with the children and making sure that they practice what they were learning. We also try to customize a lot of the work that we, or a lot of the lessons that we do to fit the needs of the children. So in one 8th grade classroom that we worked in, the kids were talking about issues around Facebook. A lot of the issues that were happening in the classroom or the things that were happening in the school stem from something that someone said on social media of some sort, not even just Facebook, but Kick, all of those different things. And so we used Facebook, we used Twitter feeds to teach them about how to deal with these issues that they're facing. So I stand here as someone who has worked with these children and seen some of the issues that they're dealing with and seen some of the things that they need to learn just around conflict resolution, and I'm really in support of this bill and hope that you all will consider passing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillespie.
Ms. Gillespie, thank you. Gentlemen, I don't want to leave here today. We have a quorum. I'd like to adopt these 2 resolutions. I think we have.
So moved. Second.
Well, okay. That doesn't mean we're ending the hearing, but I have to leave in a couple minutes, and we won't have the quorum to vote on it, and I think it's important to bring it out. There's a few more people on the list that haven't had a chance, and if you just
I would
check.
love to move each bill.
Okay, I'll take 26 resolution. Yeah, well, that's okay. City Council Resolution 15-232. This is nonviolent conflict resolution.
So moved.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All
Aye.
opposed, no. Motion carries. I don't have to sign this today. I can sign it later. And I have City Council Resolution 15-235R, which is trauma counseling.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Resolution's adopted. Thank you. Rhonda Elsey.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Ms. Elsie.
I'm an individual who experienced early childhood sexual abuse and witnessed violence. I did very well in school, but it was later in my years that my behavior changed. My sister was killed in 1983 in domestic violence. She left 2 children, one 6, one 9 months, who she was breastfeeding at the time she was killed. And my life went to pots. I used drugs. I even got arrested. But all of this, I'm saying, the children here are seeing and experiencing things that I experienced. I now am a trauma educator and specialist trained by SAMHSA. I just have completed working for 3 years in Delaware to help transform the mental health and substance abuse facilities. I would not have been as successful in recovery if I had only had mental health or substance abuse treatment. I know that. And I know that many people who are still using because they have not been serviced for the experiences that they've had. And we have to help them along the way. We have this huge substance abuse problem in Baltimore City because of all the trauma that people have experienced, and we aren't helping them along by keep finding different mental health diagnosis and giving them medication instead of helping them live through the experiences. So I have also been trained to train peers. My job in Delaware was to train people with lived experiences to work in the mental health and substance abuse facilities, and most of those individuals were the first individuals to have ever talked to people about their trauma experiences. They collected data. It was a great experience and a great program. It really kind of annoys me that Maryland had 5 years of federal dollars to transform the state in trauma, and they chose not to have a finished product. That's why nobody has had any trauma training. I'm now currently kind of hoping that I will be able to assist. I'm writing a proposal for one of the substance abuse facilities to do some training, some groups actually, because that's how it's evidence-based practices now. I was a part of the Women Co-occurring Disorder and Violence Study. I also helped to develop Tamar's Children, which was a program here for women who were incarcerated that got closed because of a lot of political stuff. So I'm hoping that we can also maybe go back to some of those things that were working that they closed. So I'm here and I'm available. I've spoken to both councilmen about what I do, and I'm willing to be of assistance in any way.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to excuse myself. This meeting I have to go to now wasn't on the schedule when we scheduled this hearing, and I apologize, but I've got to go there. I got to go. So Councilman Welch will conclude, he will finish the hearing. I only have, well, who knows? I mean, my sheets show just a couple more people that have signed in. Great. And then at the end, anyone who hasn't called, I apologize, but you'll be given a chance to testify. Yes. I have Cynthia Poindexter. Are you back from filling your meter yet, Ms. Poindexter? Oh, she's not. Well, if she's not here, keep calling her name because she ran out to fill her meter. Philip Leaf. Okay. Chikante Crawford. Miss Crawford. Ujima Ward.
Okay, she's here.
Okay, and Darlene Kane, and that's who I have.
You have Eliza Steele and Nick Maroney.
Please, I'm not sure now what the answer is. What is the name?
Eliza Steele and Nick Maroney from the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit.
Give me all the checkoff sheets. You probably didn't check off. Wait a minute. Elijah.
Is Dr. Leaf still here?
He left.
He's here.
Oh, he is here.
I'd like to have him next.
I have you here, but you didn't check off that you wanted to testify. But do you?
Yes, I thought somebody else would write that. Okay, yeah, we would love to.
No, your name is here, but it wasn't checked to testify.
Sorry about that.
Yes. You're in charge.
I get
But
the
make
pen?
sure you get.
Okay.
You make sure you get Elijah.
Yeah, I got it. Right, we'll get them all in.
All right. Double checks mean they've talked.
I got you.
Check means I want to. Double check
Check
means they did.
All
Okay.
right, I'm gonna call all the names anyway.
Okay, but don't do it till you do all the checks. Okay.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Because they.
I got you.
All right.
Thank you, Madam
They've
Chair.
waited. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I forgive you. You know I always do.
Give me 1 second.
Of
Moving
course.
chairs.
Of course I will.
Ms. Wallace? I need you for a second. Thank you. Gentlemen, listen to me very carefully. You need to listen. I need them to go get I'm calling Dr. Lee next. just ask. I don't know. He's an older white. It is now evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Please give me your name one more time.
Chiquita Crawford.
Ms. Crawford,
Yes.
welcome to our hearing. Please tell me everything.
Oh, you don't want to say that.
Thank you.
Most of the people I know left. I guess they're tired of hearing me speak so much in Baltimore City. However, my name is Chiquita Crawford. I am an advocate in the state of Maryland. I am an ambassador for NAMI. I am the chair of Baltimore City CCAC. I am on the council for Baltimore Health Administration. I am also a member of Parents Place of Maryland Be More Leaders. And I guess I should just pretty much leave it there, or I won't get to what I really want to say. So what I want to mention is that I really do support this bill in regards to teaching nonviolence and conflict resolution. It is extremely important for so many reasons. Partly, our young people that are bullying or that are young bullies will grow up to be adult bullies in the workplace.
That's right.
Or in our communities. And it's shown by what we currently see happening in Baltimore City and throughout our country today. It just doesn't go away. It continues to fester because we haven't gotten to the core of what the issues may be. My son, who stands here beside me now, when we moved him from private school to public schools, because we had no idea what was happening with him, and we found out that he had certain diagnoses. Although he was in the, I think, 98th percentile of intellect in the state of Maryland, the way he learned was different. He was attacked on a daily basis, 3 times a day from what I understood, while he was in public schools. I went to the principal, which is what I thought you do. And I can never get this picture out of my head because all she did was file her fingernails and say, and wouldn't even give me eye contact to say, "Oh, Miss Crawford, it's in your mind." I was annoyed, and I can imagine how he would have been as a child trying to find the right person to talk to or to figure out who to go to for assistance. I went throughout the entire school, teachers, after-school people trying to get assistance. One day, the after-school teacher called me and said, "Please come and get your child. Everything you said is true. He has footprints in his head, in his back, and in his chest. There's at least 100 students out here attacking him." My son was taught not to be a bully, not to fight. And part of that was because as a child, I fought on a daily basis because I realized that my parents told me that if I fought in school, when I got home, I would get it again. But when I didn't fight, I was being fought constantly, hit in the back, knocked down, and all this other stuff. I didn't want to have to go through that, and I didn't want my son to deal with that because I didn't know why he was the way he was. But it didn't help. He was attacked constantly. When the principal decided to do an all call, the entire school came down to the building. She had to do another all call to stop the school students from coming downstairs because there was no more room on the first floor of the building for more people to come to tell her what was going on. There were no places for anyone to say this child was being attacked on a regular basis. There was no place for anyone to go to complain about what was happening, and no place for my son to go and no place for us to go. The best they could do was remove my son from the school because he was being attacked. That was Hazelwood.
What school?
Hazelwood. So they moved him to Govins, and he was considered a gifted child. His grade levels dropped. He never wanted to go to school. His doctor said to me, "Do not homeschool him," because of his diagnosis. It would not help him as far as social skills were involved. It just made matters worse. I had already educated my son quite a bit at home with special tools I had provided for him. There needs to be a place for young people to feel safe. There needs to be a place for young people to know that they are being heard. There needs to be a place for young people to understand that someone is listening to you, that you are not weak when you come to an adult and say, "I need help." but it is stronger to walk away and go to an adult and than it is to stay and fight or go get a gun. Because if you go to a peer, they can only take to you what they have seen, which is what you have just seen, or what they have seen on television, because they usually don't know any more than you know. But this day and age, all they have is what they have seen on television or what the generation before them have shown them. And in this day and age, what we see is the generation before them, children, having children, and drugs. So they don't have the guidance that we had as young people, which we need, because what I have been seeing is adults telling young people, get them, go get them, go break in their house, go take what she has. It's funny. It is not funny. And when we call the police officers, not all of them, but some of them, when we call them, and what do they say? How do we know you didn't have something to do with it? What are we telling our young people? It's not okay. The messages that we give to them are not the messages we need to give to them. This is why we see our so-called civil unrest. We can dress it up any kind of way we want. It was a riot. It was anger. It was frustration. It was a volcano exploding. And in order to prevent that, we need to start at the core. We need to make sure that the younger they are, that they understand that they have an outlet that needs to be left there at the core so that when they move forward, it doesn't go with them. We need to make sure that resources are there. What they are experiencing is real and not a joke. We need to make sure that they understand that they need to feel like they are heard, that they need to be understood, and that these adults that they go to are really adults and not just in name only. We don't need adults acting like children. They need to grow up. I am tired of adults trying to live through their children. Part of this bill needs to make sure that we educate our adults and not our children. We put too much responsibility on our children. We expect so much from our youth, and our youth are looking for us to help guide them, but we don't have the guidance ourselves. That's the problem. We need to fix it. Our children are looking to us, and if we don't have anything to show them, we're in trouble because they are our future, and if we don't show them a future, we all fail. We can't expect them to get A's and we have F's. There's a problem there. We need to resolve it. Students need to know that if they choose to do the positive method, that they are not in it alone, that we're there with them, that we're there for them, and that that's a positive action that they can take. That does not mean that the bully or the person that was messing with them is the positive one and they are the negative one. Because often what is happening is they're saying, I'm not doing this, I'm taking another cheek, and then what happens? They end up with no peers, no friends, they're out of the link, and what happens now? They have no family, so they go to the gangs to look for a family in school or in the neighborhood. And now we have another problem occurring. I know my time is running out because we're short, so I'm gonna leave it there, but as I said before, young bullies become big bullies. We need to put an end to it. Thank you.
Thank you for your, yes, sir.
That was in 2001, but let me tell you, it didn't stop there. I wanted to stop this here. Even in Arrow Center for Education, we had the same problem. At New Foundation, we had the same problem. At Govins, we had a similar problem. It didn't stop there. This is why I am an advocate. This is why I am the chair of Baltimore City CCAT. This is why my son is out of school and I'm still here advocating, and people are saying to me, why are you still doing this? Your son is out of school. Because people that come behind me should not still have to be going through what I'm going through and what I had gone through and what my child went through, because I'm still getting the phone calls because something has not taken place that should have taken place a long time ago. Because once I left, they thought She's gone now. We can continue. No, you can't. You're welcome.
Thank you for
Have
your
a wonderful
testimony.
day. You're welcome. Thank you all for listening.
Is Dr. Leaf still here? Okay. Good evening, Dr. Leaf.
Good
How are
evening,
you?
Councilman. I'm great.
Good.
I'm going to be real brief because I think you've heard a lot of really good testimony, everything from the mayor's office, the health department, the city schools are doing, but you also heard a lot of community folks, both people working in the community and real parents and even young people. And I think, again, just recognizing that there isn't a once, there's lots, this is really complicated. And the trauma has been going on in Baltimore for a long time. This isn't something that's going to get out right away. And so again, so looking not just in these particular two pieces of legislation, but I think more generally, how are you helping to create a trauma-informed Baltimore? How are we making sure that all the assets in Baltimore, whether they're employer assets or the school systems or the community folks themselves, I mean, even the walks that Councilman Mosby's been doing, part of it is getting the community together and showing positive things, but you run into individuals there and you talk to them and you provide individual advice. And so I think that, again, the support of needing mental health services in schools, but also, helping to break the cycle, because again, the trauma could occur where somebody remembers 3 years ago their brother got killed because they saw something on a TV. Or something happened in a neighborhood. Again, it's not necessarily something that happens to you and your family. You're walking by, and we had the incident in East Baltimore where a young man was walking around, going home, and a building blew up and killed him. Well, the children that are in his school, his neighbors. I mean, so again, I think we have these assets, how to support them best. And just the one thing I didn't hear in the testimony today is also remembering that the children are not the only people in the schools, that the staff, the principals, and the other parents are equally traumatized. And so when we have the responses, and I know this is what's being done. Again, the discussions were just on the students in the schools, but the teachers have also lost that child, the principals lost that child, the secretaries lost that child, the cafeteria workers, the janitors, and so making sure that we're recognizing that it's all of us who live in Baltimore City or work in Baltimore City who need to be supported, and not fighting about which is more or less important, that they're all important because we're all, as you heard, I think, from many of the people, we all need to be part of the solution. So again, I thank you for having the legislation, and I think you really saw a lot of positive support from a lot of different constituencies thinking that this is something that is really very important for Baltimore City.
Thank you, Dr. Leaf. Well noted. Ms. Ujima Masani? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening for all the staff that's still left. Hello, Nick. I'm working this PowerPoint. Somebody's working a PowerPoint for me. I'm going to try to go through those slides briefly because you've been here a while. I work currently as a counselor for substance abuse at the Powell Recovery Center, which is down the street on Broadway. And those populations are growing. Sorry, I was going to wait till the PowerPoint comes up. It should say trauma. It should say Bill Welch on there. I can't read it from here. It's a PowerPoint at the top. It's orange.
Go to the top and do search. Top right. Search.
So I wanted to talk about the comprehensive strategies in trauma and grief and loss when working with at-risk youth, or why our children cry. But I want to first introduce the fact that we are the Social Work Social Network, and we're a group of over 24 urban-centered social workers who are graduates of a CSE certified university, and we are either both experienced or licensed, representing a number of specializations from public and private and governmental sectors. We do all kinds of work from foster care, substance abuse, school social work, hospitals, prisons, and the like. Dr. Webb, who was here earlier, is my former professor at Morgan, and Senator Catherine Pugh is my former employer, where I worked in the Park Heights community as a legislative aide. We're talking about what's really occurring in this community right now, and according to the National Child Traumatic Stress Effort, which is under the umbrella of FIT, a Family Informed Trauma Treatment Center, there is mounting evidence suggesting that children and adolescents grow up in urban poverty and are more likely to experience multiple traumas and significant adverse life events, developing complex symptoms of traumatic distress at disproportionate rates. So let's roll the tape here. What we're addressing is, and I think the young lady in the back said, what we call parentification, the process of role reversal whereby a child is obliged to act as a parent to their own parent. And then we have a history of homelessness, violence, self-esteem, peer influence, marginalization, lack of both communal and in-home resources, PTSD, and combat fatigue. Those exposures have certain risks because when children are repeatedly exposed, they create a complicated set of reactions that occur before, during, and after traumatic events, carrying long-term developmental risks where exposure in these urban environments have now been listed as a public health concern. NCTSN recognizes that there is still limited treatment effectiveness or practice research available to guide the delivery of services to this highly impacted, underserved population, even though today I heard about some really great programs. Never had a chance. Some of these children have never had a chance, and although the data can be produced that supports the resilience of children, the opportunities for many youth diminish based upon the findings of Erwin Parsons' Inner City Children of Trauma, Urban Violence, Traumatic Stress. When children witness injury, suffering, and death, they respond to these events with fear and grief, often experiencing dramatic ruptures in their development. Parson also reported that there is a list of psychological reactions which were long and grim: hatred for self, profound loss of trust in the community and the world, tattered internalized moral values and ethics of caring, breaking down of the inner and outer sense of security and of reality, and extremely vulnerable to traumatic stress illnesses and related behavioral and academic abnormalities. And I see that growing every day at Powell, where the population is increasing exponentially in the area of young people who are on opiates. So the research and analysis says we need to create new knowledge around this old pain, and we need to stand for something. And standing for something is changing the paradigm when the trust is the issue. So if organizational goals are to be inclusive in the mechanics that incorporate empowerment, then the line staff must also be empowered by recognizing their sentiments and engaging inner city populations, implementing discussions on topics that are paramount in the lives of urban youth and for any youth at risk. So we're talking about cultural competence, we're talking about honest change. We have to have input of their voice, and that empowers those particular populations. We do have pieces of the puzzle, and those do fit. So just to generalize, in marginalized communities, when we have youth that express a history of negative experiences having been imposed on them, then these decisions that will impact their lives, they should involve input from that client, paired with the responsibility of a deliverable, of their noted and valued input while practicing the ethical boundaries and transference, because that's sometimes a problem in working with certain populations. Now, there is some strategies that we could come up with thinking out of the box when we're talking about trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy and trauma-informed treatment, and those are normally standards. But back in the 1980s, I ran a program here for Baltimore City called under the Mayor's Advisory Committee on Art and Culture, called the Arts Expansion Program. And I went into the school systems and interviewed and spoke with a number of students who were facing degrees of trauma. And in that program, because it was manpower funded, we found that there were populations of students, and this is before there was a School of the Art, who would benefit from what we now call creative, artistic, and expressive therapies. And that therapy was me putting them in places like Peabody Conservatory, where that was their job, and they learned theory, and they learned sight reading, and they learned their instrument or their voice. And then I found scholarships for them from anywhere from Juilliard to Shenandoah to Berkeley School of Music, and they went on to have great and very productive lives. So we are a group of inspiring minds trying to create new ideas. And we want to say at the end of this is that when the situation happened with the Freddie Gray family, we were one of the first groups to engage that particular population with grief and loss counseling. We did the viewing and the homegoing services for the Gray family. And there is an opportunity here to work a new model, to create a new narrative. And we have to address it from the perspective of we can't keep pouring new wines into old vines. And that saying, and in saying that, we're saying that we have to reference urban youth with a different kind of model of diagnosing them. At-risk youth with disorders of ADHD and inappropriate special education placements, which have systemically desensitized and historically misaligned this population by enveloping currently socially accepted descriptions that are often characterized by marginalized incongruencies. So you got Eurocentric values for African-centered youth and youth normally in certain populations, and they don't identify with what you're talking about. You're talking at them, you're not talking to them. And how you talk to them, you start using the particular communication vehicles that they're used to. We can create new interests, new followings through the social media impacts that impacts their lives. Finally, I know money impacts this whole thing, and everything costs money, but things can go down because we can change this narrative. And by brainstorming together, we can look at how the city can create the change we need with grassroots programs like the one I just spoke of. The answer and the resources in the people, and we need to have some measurements and deliverables. You cannot hijack the money and run away with it, okay? I want to say that again. You can't hijack the money and run away with it. And with that, that's the end of my presentation.
Where's your funding?
I'm sorry?
Where do you get funding?
For? Well, right now, we are just doing it as a volunteer group of social workers. So we just come together to do this as part of our give back and work that we're doing now. We can't do it as often as we like because it does demand funding, but we are always available until that time where we can find the resources to do what we do better. And
through the health department or through any foundation?
well, we're so inundated right now with our normal work that we haven't, so we're just addressing this issue right here, but we are going to look forward to doing some more stuff.
Excellent.
Okay? All right, thank you.
I had no idea you wear so many hats.
I'm sorry?
I had no idea you wear so many hats.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Dr. Claudia Lawrence Webb?
What's with the school system?
School system, okay. How about Jessica Williams? No Jessica Williams? Okay. Delilah Spriggs? That means that's one that's gone. Who else would like to testify? Please. Thank you. We're just going to do it by hands now to make sure we can clear the room.
I almost managed to knock myself out there, so I'm not sure I'm going to be speaking very coherently.
Good evening.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Thanks very much. So myself and my colleague Eliza are from the Attorney General's office across the road here, but we are just umbrellaed there. We're just based there. We're from an independent state unit.
For the record, what's your name?
My name is Nick Maroney,
Nick
and
Maroney.
my colleague is Eliza Steele. We work as independent state juvenile justice monitors. The reason that our unit began is because of the abuse, the systemic abuse surrounding the use of the boot camp model about 15 years ago. What we do is we visit the committed care facilities run by the Department of Juvenile Services unannounced, and we visit the detention centers run by the department unannounced, and we visit the places that the department directly licensed unannounced, and we report publicly every 3 months on what we find there in terms of services and in terms of issues, more importantly, in terms of issues of safety and or harm to the kids. So statutorily, what we're mandated to do is to guard against the abuse of kids, but we're also mandated to ensure appropriate services and resources for the kids that are in these situations. But apart from that, I think we have a mission, at least the reason that I believe Eliza, I want to speak completely for Eliza, but I know reasonably well. So I think the reason we are doing the job that we're doing is because we want to reform the Maryland juvenile justice system. Currently in Maryland, the state is willing to borrow money via bonds to build concrete facilities to warehouse kids. The recidivism rates that the department publishes on their website do not indicate a record of success in those facilities. On the other hand, what you folks are doing is tremendous in terms of drawing attention to what is extremely important, and that is that rather than being willing to spend, for example, $179 million was planned to be spent on the construction of new DJS facilities in financial year 2015, I think we managed through public reporting to put the stake in the heart of that particular vampire, but at the same time, we don't see those kinds of funds being leveraged for services within the community. We did push the department, and the Annie Casey Foundation helped to do a joint report on the kids who are in committed placement, in other words, sent out of home. We anecdotally felt that those kids, the majority of them, were not there because of some propensity towards violence or because they were very high risk. And the report that ultimately was published early this year showed that 27% of the kids in committed care that's out of home for 6 months, 9 months, maybe in state, maybe out of state, sent there through the courts and DJS, were assessed through the department's own, hopefully reasonably objective assessment instrument as being medium or low risk kids, not high risk. And also that, the 27% were there for technical violations of probation. But also the majority of kids in those placements were not high risk, they were low or medium risk. I think that was the 57%. I'm sorry, misspoke. So what does that all mean? I think it means that we're going to echo what folks seem to be intimating earlier, which is that there's a lot of unaddressed needs that need to be taken care of in the community. We're talking prevention. It's very unsexy. You can't, maybe, folks maybe can't get into office, or I can't make $1 million out of it myself, but early intervention and prevention is where we need to be if we want to stop the cycle. And in terms of trauma-informed care, which basically should be the provision of proven services with a kind of empathetic approach that tries to figure out what went wrong in that individual's life or what challenges that individual is facing, and taking that into account when you provide or try to provide services, that needs to happen early on in the community so we don't have all of these kids with unaddressed needs sent out to these places. In addition to the kids that are stuck in the juvenile system, and thankfully we've managed to help the department towards reform so that the kids that do end up in these facilities are not subject to some kind of systemic abuse or violence as in the past. So we're not harming the kids, but are we actually helping those kids as individuals giving them the tools to come back by sending them away from families. Oftentimes, the problems, the challenges are within the families or within the situation, and so the kid faces the same kind of issue when they come back, plus they've lost all the time at school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If my child got in trouble, and I'll tell you what I would do. I would try and figure out what does my child need, and who's the professional in the community that can help me to get that for my kid. I wouldn't be thinking, gee, I wonder if there's some concrete place about 200 miles away that I can send my child to be with a whole bunch of other kids for about a year, and when the kid comes back, it's all going to be great. So I think Eliza has a few ideas as to how, some ideas as to how, or some things that could be done in terms of trying to provide a different approach within the community. And I started by saying that the state is investing a lot of money, has invested a lot of money historically and continues to in concrete facilities. If there's a way to persuade the state to start, instead of taking that money, which they're now not going to spend, it looks like, on these new facilities, and putting it towards resources within the community, that would definitely be the way to go. Thanks.
Thank you.
It was recently announced that we will.
The new jail.
We're talking about DJS.
The original plan, but
this is another 3 or 4 places in addition to that.
That would be DJS facilities.
The one you're talking about falls under corrections, and they're going to renovate and go ahead with that, it looks like, which is kind of outside our purview, but the DJS, the Department of Juvenile Services, we're going to build another 3 or 4 facilities. I think
for now.
It's on that. That's on that.
Yeah, I understand.
But yeah, so like Nick said, I mean, I think what we've seen in the juvenile justice system in Maryland is a lot of kids who are being essentially punished for an unmet need, Oh, sorry. So it's not kids with a serious propensity towards criminality or anything like that. It's kids who have unmet needs that have been punished. So what we'd like to see is using this resolution as an opportunity to continue reducing the population of kids that are in DJS. National statistics estimate that about 75% of kids in juvenile justice systems have been exposed to violence. It's probably a much higher number. And so if those needs can be met effectively in the community, it's likely to prevent a lot of those kids from being involved in the justice system down the line, which we know is not where we want them to wind up. I was really glad to see Dr. Wen here. I think the idea of approaching this from a public health perspective is the right way to do it. It's likely to yield more widespread results, which was obviously also what we would like to see. And it also would recognize the connections that exist between trauma, mental health issues, and substance abuse. To that end, I think what Nick and I have talked about would be extending the provision of the services that you're talking about, the trauma counseling services, to be implemented in places other than the schools. A lot of the kids who've experienced trauma, like the woman from the Center for School Mental Health mentioned, in addition to the schools, experience absenteeism. They stop going. So a lot of them aren't there. A lot of them are there, but a lot of them are not there. And so we'd like to see, in addition to the services being deployed in the schools, seeing them deployed in rec centers, and through proactive outreach. And also the potential exists for collaboration with the police department here, I think, to have social workers deployed alongside police officers who are on patrol, to just be out there in places where kids are likely to have been exposed to violence.
And on that, to sort of literally perhaps have social workers or folks who are at the School of Social Work maybe, to go on ride-alongs with the police, not into the middle of a crisis situation, but just to sort of, so they can educate each other about the various aspects of what might be going on, so that it's not just completely, so that the police are not stuck in this framework of being totally about, is there something here I need to arrest somebody for? Is there something here that needs some kind of enforcement? But actually to proactively be involved in trying to figure out what's going on with individual folks within the community and with the community as a whole. Social workers and police could work together very well.
And I think to make that happen in a meaningful way will require a lot of money for a lot of positions. Obviously there's going to be an increased need for the number of social workers, but that's way more affordable than increased criminal justice system involvement, we know. And also it would require training. I mean, those people need to be doing evidence-based practices. They need to be doing some of the strategies that have been mentioned here today. And And Dr. Leaf mentioned this, and I think someone else may have also mentioned it, but the need for vicarious trauma services is also going to be hugely important if we're going to actually make steps towards turning Baltimore into a trauma-informed city. And basically that entails recognizing the fact that everybody from the top to the bottom of different agencies is going to be impacted by this. And so it's not just the victims and the people who've been exposed to violence, but also the people delivering services and who are touched by it in a less direct way.
And the police, for example, who may be just emotionally exhausted, some of these folks.
Yeah.
So we're happy to see it happen. We think there's a lot of additional opportunities in addition to the school where these kinds of services should be deployed from.
Some of them may not be expensive. There may be lots
And
of private foundations right now that would be very interested to hear from the city in terms of pilot programs. There may be relationships that can be forged with the various schools, social work, law schools, etc. In terms of internships with the city police, for example, in terms of lots of different possibilities and ideas that maybe won't take so much money. We all won't have to go to Annapolis.
Bless you both for that.
Pardon? Peer, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What organization?
The Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit is the name of it.
So we're out of the Attorney General's office, and yeah, it's the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit, but we used to be called the Independent Monitor's Office.
But it's JJMU now.
We do report on the Attorney General's website. There's a link to our public reports, and the department responds as well. And so does MSD, who now run all the services.
Great.
That's our latest. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you wanted the...
You want one?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where it goes.
Sorry, sir.
You'll get it for the record.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much
Thank you
for listening to us.
Thank you for your testimony. Where is Cynthia Poindexter? Good evening, Ms. Poindexter. How are you?
I'm just great, just great. My name is Cynthia Poindexter. Good evening, respected council members, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cynthia Poindexter. I'm the CEO for Harambe New Day, and Harambe is Swahili for Communities Working Together. We're located inside of Franklin Square Elementary Middle School. Dr. Crawley, who came up to speak, the young man Kevin Aduna, was one of the children who came through our program. We're an early education, early childhood program located in Baltimore City. I've been inside of that school for 23 years. We are the grassroots. We're early education, early care, but we're licensed from 2 years of age to 15 years of age. A lot of our children age out as far as finance is concerned when they become 12 for the Child and Adult Care Food Program, and they age out for child care subsidy once they become a certain age. But we still have those children. Kevin's one of those children, but those young men who are in our program, when they turn 13, 14, and 15, at that point, we're in the capacity of having them volunteer and learn how to work ethics and, and assist us in what we do. And so what I began to realize when I was talking to some of my colleagues, being the president of the Baltimore City Child Care Association, and when some of the unrest started with the young man, Freddie Gray, I was called by Family Network. I don't know if you know Maryland Family Network, and Margaret Williams is the president there. I'm one of those board members for public policy, but we deal in Annapolis a lot of times with the people there, appealing to them as far as what we do and how we do it. And they asked, well, do you have any problems or you have any situations? Had anything happened to you guys? I said no, but firsthand or secondhand. Firsthand meaning some children are exposed to violence firsthand. They have seen a dead body on the street. I was born and raised in Baltimore, and I'm a recipient of Towson State University. I've never seen a dead body on the street. And I don't want to see a dead body, but some children have. And then secondhand, are you exposed to it through television or in your home? A lot of violence takes place in our homes, but the trauma or after effects of children, they are for real. They come out in the way of behavior, the way they play with their friends, the way they talk. And theoretically, it frightens children when the adults around them can't help them get control of themselves. That's our position. Knowing the characteristics associated with violence and being able to identify it appropriately is a part of what we do. About 10 or 15 years ago or less, we had a situation with Family League of Baltimore. We were in collaboration with them. We did a study on violence or how it affects children, their behavior or intake form, to see, okay, what happens, how do children react, how does this affect their learning, you know, what does this do to them once they've been exposed to violence, and how does it play out in the educational part of who they are. So we embrace the whole family. We cannot just embrace a segment of a family like the child. I agree with this bill, the one said trauma counsel for children affected by violence. We've always known that social emotional, which is at our level, we call it, the mental health part is very, very important in the aspect of who we are working with children. And we begin to realize, yes, this did affect them. So what Family League of Baltimore did, they did a study with John Hopkins, the Dr. So-and-so, he came up, he spoke, they did a track record and did some, statistics, and we found out it does affect our children. It affects them maybe long-term or short-term because everyone is different. Trauma is trauma, and trauma will come forth in some type of way, even if it's in a negative aspect. So we embrace the whole family. We cannot just say, okay, the child went to school, and the school is the hub of the community. We embrace the whole family, meaning the parent, the child, the community. We took a group of parents away for training along with their children, and we wined and dined them, meaning we gave them something to eat. We gave them cards for Walmart. We talked to the family. You developed a relationship with them because initially they're not going to share anything with us because they don't trust us. And we call it synergy. The synergy of all of us working together is the most effective way for us to reach our families and our children and change our communities. And it's an investment. It's a long-term investment because most of us sitting here now are over a certain age. So either we're going to invest in them now or we're going to have to suffer the consequences later on. So my stance is that, yes, we have that trauma piece for mental health, but don't forget the ages below that age, the 2-year-olds and the 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and don't forget the ones who go past 13, that the system no longer gives us assistance with, but we're still helping them out of pocket, which is an investment, because either we'll bring them in there or we're going to meet them on the street later on. So I thank you very much for hearing me out.
I thank you for your testimony. Now, how many people left to testify? All right, I'm 3. All right, I'm gonna start with the lady in the pink shirt since she's closest. And please introduce yourself with the microphone so we can check you off.
Okay. My name, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
And thank you all for this opportunity. My name is Ebony Johnson, and I am, by my own term, a freelance advocate. And I'm really big on mental and emotional health, but more specifically trauma. I myself have been a victim of pretty much every trauma known to man, humankind. Mental, physical, emotional, sexual, and it has really I'm 27 years old now, and it has, severely impacted my life from, trying to graduate from college and being, kicked out of churches and being, but so many different effects, but mine started off as a child, being sexually abused as a child by family, being, sexually assaulted and beat up as a child by family and by friends, being bullied in school as a child in elementary, middle, and high school. And what I would always try to do is move away. I would try to get away from people. So I'm always running away. The fight or flight mechanism with me, the flight part would always take place. And before I graduated from college, upon being in the SGA, Student Government Association, I became really big on mental health awareness. And, because I felt that it wasn't something that was really being talked about. I'm also a really big advocate for trauma-informed and trauma-specific care. I'm just now able to put this name to this because myself, going through the mental health system, I'm going to say that I was failed. This year I was abused while involuntary and while in voluntary treatment for mental health services, and it made my trauma disorders 10 times worse. I have partial memory loss, and I'm also now afraid of going to any professionals anymore for help because I feel like nobody will protect me. But as I said, my abuse started as a child. And when I was a child, I didn't know any better but to go to my parents or to go to whoever. And it was, oh, get from up under me and this, that, the fourth. So like I said, at 27 years old, I suffer severely. Even as I'm talking to you right now, I'm suffering from symptoms that I'm not showing, but it's very hard for me. And I decided that any opportunity I had to come and speak about anything, I would talk about it. You know, during the Freddie Gray incidents, I was out there and I spoke. Wherever I went to Empowerment Temple, I spoke anywhere I went. And a lot of people to this day look at me like I'm crazy, but I've been determined to continue to share my story. I also want to say that it's very important to get to the root of the problem because people always want to say the past is the past. I don't believe that the past is the past because the past creates your future. You cannot have an effect without a cause. You cannot have, so it's past, future, and that's something that I also try to, I'm a big proponent of. But I also wanted to say that, for example, when you think about getting to the root of a problem, for example, a child being bullied, a child being molested, think about, I think when you have weeds in your yards and people spray weed be gone and they uproot, they pull these weeds up and they wonder, why are these weeds still growing? Well, because it has not been uprooted at the germination level. If it's not been uprooted at that level, you're going to continue to have cellular replication and you're going to continue to have these weeds grow. It's the same thing when it comes to systemic, societal, psychological, socioeconomical problems. But when you're going to the level of childhood, at the level of childhood, when it comes to child psychology, a child's mind, you have a thing called nature versus nurture controversy. A child's mind is being formed not even when they're out of their mother's womb, but even in their mother's womb. So you might have trauma before they get to the schoolhouse, before they get to the basketball court. A mother's drinking alcohol, they come out as alcoholic already. The mother's being abused, they come out feeling abused. The parents are arguing in front of their children. That is also considered a form of child abuse. You don't even have to touch a child. You can argue in front of your children, and that's child abuse. You have a child like me who took 8 years for me to get through college, who almost got kicked out of a great high school, had to have the Board of Education to keep me in there. My father had to fight for me, who has lived in homeless shelters to this day. I'm going in between homeless shelters, who have lived on park benches, I've lived in hospitals. I've been yelled at by police. I've been threatened to be arrested by police because I was having trauma disorders and they didn't understand. This was a year ago. I've been bullied by doctors who have yelled at me in the past year. And as I said, I went through a traumatic experience this year while I'm in treatment, and I have partial memory loss to this day because of it, and nobody will take my case. So as I'm speaking to you all, I'm fighting as I'm speaking with you all, but I wanted to come out here. This young lady right here introduced me, and I could not miss this opportunity, and I vote wholeheartedly for this bill and also for the one dealing with violence, but more specifically with trauma. We need a lot more people who are trained to really understand how trauma works. And I just wanted to say that. Thank you all very much.
Well, I want to thank you for such a well-spoken testimony and for your courage to present that testimony, not just for yourself, but for so many others. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I see the young lady in the white shirt. We're getting there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alethea McCullough, and I am a veteran public school teacher. I've taught in Baltimore City Public Schools. I've taught in a juvenile detention center. I taught internationally, and I've taught Virginia, PG County. So I was in Walbrook when they were burning up the school, and I've been with the doctor's children. Wow. And I've seen this violent behavior. We keep saying that it has something to do with poverty, which it does, but I've seen the same behavior in the kids from the middle-class families. Their parents are doctors, they're lawyers, they're driving up in their expensive cars. The children have been desensitized to violence. They think it's funny. They think the bullying is funny. I've seen an increase of bullying of teachers. And I think it directly correlates with the school's inability to discipline the kids. Our jobs are determined by how many of these kids behave. The principal loses his job if he suspends too many kids. The teacher is told that they don't have any classroom management if you write up all of the kids who are misbehaving. Say that kid that does have that mental health issue. I know it. We all know it. They're terrorizing everybody in the classroom. You're writing, you're going to guidance for help. Well, guidance is overwhelmed. The children abuse guidance now. They do have people that they can talk to, and they go regularly. So if I don't want to go to Miss Jones' class of math and I don't like it, well, then I'm going to go to guidance, and now that's going to be my time. Every day I'm going to have a problem or a conflict with someone. Well, I'm in a tested subject area. I need you in class in order for me to get you to learn what you need to pass. I can't do that if everyone is pulling you every 5 minutes to sit in a meeting to discuss whatever issues you may have going on. Now, is it important for them to have an outlet? Of course. But how is that going to be done? I've been teaching 16 years. Every year we hear that we need new training for something. We hear that we need more guidance counselors. We need more social workers. Well, when you call these people, they're not available. Not to the classroom teacher, not with me in the classroom of 30 kids every day, and we've seen kids come in every day and have a fight. Principals can't suspend them. The parents won't do anything with them. These kids are cursing their parents. They don't listen to their parents. They're on their cell phones, every little thing, texting to their parents. Mommy, the teacher wouldn't answer my question. Mommy, the teacher did this, the teacher did that. And those same parents come to school, and then they side with the child. So it's not always because the child has been traumatized. They have this kind of mean girl mentality where it is okay for them if they don't get their way. They know how to get together and file petitions. I've seen it done. They don't like their grade, they're filing petitions. The teachers or the principals won't do what the parents say. Well, they do get together. They complain, they get that principal fired. We all need our jobs. So then the principal now turns on the teacher. Well, then we're not going to complain about Jerry Jones because his mother is a lawyer, or his mother runs to the school board all the time complaining. And in her mind, Jerry Jones does no wrong, even though everyone in the school knows that Jerry Jones is starting fights with people all the time. So I think it's good to have the counseling. The kids need to learn conflict resolution. I don't think a curriculum is necessary. We end up doing that every day. And if you're going to have it put somewhere, then social studies is the place for it. It's not a tested subject area. You can directly link it with all the battles that we've had in our country, all the different conflicts. They can sit there and have conversations about the things that have been going on in the city. I teach language arts. I can't sit around all day and have a conversation. You can't do that in your math class. And what matters for us is numbers. I'm told, and part of my evaluation says that if I'm sitting, I'm not a good teacher. Well, you're telling me if you want me to have a round circle and do conflict resolution, that means I need to sit and talk. And the children, they don't have respect for one another. While you're trying to talk to one, they'll walk up and cut that person off. So we are already doing conflict resolution every day in our classrooms. We are trying to teach them manners. We are trying to teach them how to be civil. But when you have your parent come in here and justify your behavior, it's hard to tell Johnny that you're wrong when mommy says Johnny is not the problem, that other child is the problem. So I think too many hands spoil the pot, and education has become where so many people have a say-so. Everyone wants their way, and you can't get results when everyone wants their way. And if you want to see some real results, then we have to get back to letting the schools be able to discipline the kids, come up with rules, and everyone has to follow those rules. Not if I don't want my child to follow that rule, then they don't have to, but everyone else has to. You can't have one accord when everyone is doing their own thing. And we don't need anymore, speaking as a teacher who's still on the front lines, I don't need another meeting. I need time to do what I'm supposed to do in my classroom. If you want me to learn conflict resolution your way, do it in a professional development. On days when there's no school, you can train us all at one time. But I don't need someone else coming in now trying to tell me how to implement what they need for me to do, and I have to meet my Common Core requirements. It's overwhelming. Trying to, where the funding is coming from all these people, I don't know. We don't all still have computers. We don't all still have Wi-Fi. So you're telling me to connect with the kids on Facebook with what? So then how are we coming up with all the money for all these extra social workers and all these mediators and all these groups? Because it's going to take money. And then where's the time coming from? Where are you going to pull the kids? And the kids that need it the most, their parents are not going to work with you. They're not coming to that meeting. Anyone can take these smart kids and let them be the captains. And, well, they're leaders. Those are not the ones we're having the problems with. We're having the problems with the ones that can't really read. And they can't read because of this social promotion. And so now I get them in 7th grade, 8th grade, and now you're telling me to make Johnny behave? Well, Johnny's misbehaving because he can't read. Parents can't do anything with him. That has nothing to do with him being traumatized because he saw some violence. They see violence every day. The kids will tell you, if that's not my family, I don't care. That's how they feel about it. We can try to get them to care, but I think it's so ingrained in our society now that this new generation, it is all about me. And if it doesn't have anything to do with me, then they're not interested. And the other thing we keep doing that's wrong is we keep rewarding the really bad kids. Well, you won't go to class, so they get all the special programs, they get all the special trips, they get awards, and the kids who aren't stellar students, they get nothing. And the kids who are in the middle, they get totally ignored. You're not a high achiever, so you're not getting rewards, and you're not tearing up the school. So now we have to try to meet that medium. And as you know, we spend a lot of our own money trying to do this stuff. So if you don't have money to pay your teachers, again, I'm saying, where are the social workers coming from? Where are all these clubs coming from? How are you going to go? I don't hear anyone saying how you're going to implement all of that in the programs that are already jam-packed, trying to meet Common Core requirements. And then for parents who do have kids who are on track, they are not going to be happy about being told that their child must take conflict resolution because according to them, their child doesn't have a problem. So can every child benefit from conflict resolution? They sure could. But I think it's already being done in the classroom. We need to get back to having some standards in these schools and allowing the people who work in them to enforce them without penalty. Because as it stands now, referrals are decreasing because if I don't decrease them, then my evaluation is affected. I'm not a good teacher. So I just don't report as many anymore. It's not that your program is working. And I'm telling you, that's what we talk about when we're in a room. It's not working. We're not gonna, if you're not gonna do anything with the child, then why keep writing them up? And so the administrator will tell you, figure out something. Guidance will tell you, you figure out what to do with them. So you figure out your way, and it all depends on that child's background. I will deal with somebody on the west side of Baltimore City totally differently than I would a child in Mitchellville. This child will understand. I'm from the hood, as you say. So I'm from the hood. I can talk to this child a certain way. I can connect with them. I can get them to do it. But I know I can't talk to this child from Mitchellville whose parents is a text message away the same way that I can get the effect from that child. I didn't need anybody to train me to do that. You learn that doing the job. So yes, I could benefit from some strategies that maybe I haven't heard from, but again, during a professional development, not a curriculum, and if you want it included somewhere, insert it in social studies, because after all, that's supposed to be about social issues, and they can learn it there, they can do their mock committees, include it in the student government. Make a conflict resolution team there. But the number of kids who are running to guidance claiming they have problems, it is overwhelming. All of them have them now. And some of them, that's all they're doing with these cell phones. They're recording people, they're fighting all the time, and most of them are over something on Facebook. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify?
Good evening. My name is Darlene Kane.
Good evening, Ms.
I come to you this
Kane.
evening as a grandparent of 2 children in Baltimore City School. I also come to you as a volunteer in Baltimore City School. I'm a literacy tutor as well. I also have my own organization called Mothers on the Move as well. And I'm for this bill today because I'm excited. Years ago when I was in school, we didn't have none of this. We had fist fights, but we didn't have all this guns and stabbings and violence like we're having now. And I believe with this bill, it's a step. It's a step to change. We have to listen to everyone who's trying to come together to make a change. So I'm for this, and I'm from both sides. I'm from the inner city. I know these kids. I come to them on the corners. I talk to them about furthering their education. I talk to them every day about drugs and what drugs do to you, and they listen to me. I also go to the Baltimore City schools. I also be out here talking to people in Baltimore City every single day. And from the trauma side, I'm from that side also. I used to work in University of Maryland Shot Trauma, where we seen so many dirt bike accidents. We've seen many people with limbs removed, and people have to go home like this. So they will need this type of counseling. Also in Baltimore City, within the last few days, we had a shooting on a playground. We had someone shot at least 20 times. We have to convince our kids that they can go back to school. We have to make them believe it's okay to play on the playground again. We have to make them believe that you can ride a dirt bike, but you can't ride it somewhere legal. We have to let you know that when you fight, you can make up and be friends again. It is okay. And in reference to bullying, we can teach bullies about not being bullies anymore. So again, today I'm not going to take up a lot of your time because many people have already said the things that I already wanted to say. But our youth do deserve a good education in school, and our youth deserve to be in a peaceful atmosphere as well. So if you're with this bill and you're voting for this bill, then I'm with you today. I want to thank Councilman Welch for asking me to come out today, and I'm glad to come in to do my testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Kane. Is there anyone else that would wish to testify? Being that the case, I recommend that we close this hearing. I'm working as the chair for Mary Pat Clark, and this hearing is concluded. Thank you.
Ooh.